Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the final round of the NXTGEN Racing PROTO GT3 Championship Season 3, as brought to you on the Premier Sim Racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. And today, we go racing in the state of Texas, and we go racing with the finale in mind, as it is round 5 of 5 here at the Circuit of the Americas, and what a round we have in store for us. In the fact that this is a circuit that is very young compared to most of the circuits around the world, and indeed across the United States of America. But whilst the circuit may be young, it is by no means dry of racing aspects which we know and love, where it be extended straights overtaking, corner sequences that will push our drivers to the absolute limit of their technical ability, and everything else in between with multiple elevation changes, chicanes, and also sweeping wide corners, and plenty of whip to do battle from corner to corner. Well, the Hermann Tilke designed circuit may only be about 15 years old, but I can tell you one thing, it's already seen 15 years of absolutely brilliant racing around its asphalt, and may that continue today as our drivers get ready to go racing. And we'll be in the season finale as well. It means all is on the line today, with multiple championships still to be crowned, and who will walk away our champions in the state of Texas, we'll find out in due course. As we welcome to you this broadcast live from circuit side, you may be tuning via one of 3 media platforms available to you currently, where it be via the 2 official NXTGEN Racing media channels. The first one being on YouTube. If you go to youtube.com and search for NXTGEN Racing, you can be tuning there, and welcome to you if you're tuning in via YouTube. Alternatively, via the official NXTGEN Racing Facebook group, which may be found at facebook.com/groups/NXTGEN Racing, and welcome to you if you're tuning in via the Facebook channel. And lastly, we have the unofficial broadcast being brought to you live on Twitch. That's at twitch.tv/TX141, and welcome to you if you're tuning in via Twitch. But who is TX141, I hear you ask? Well, let me introduce myself. My name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Brit of the Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And I'll be bringing you all your racing action tonight. Speaking of which, here's our schedule for tonight. Times in British Summer Time, that's BST, or Universal Coordinated Time +1, UTC +1, and we can see it as follows. It is in just under 12 minutes time. It will be going to the qualifying session, our final qualifying session of the season, which will see all drivers out of the circuit in their respective scenes, and therefore trying to set their best possible lap times before they make their way into the final race of the season. 120 minutes of racing action here, and it'll be getting underway with our drivers going to the grid at 5 to 8 this evening. And who will come out on top? That is the ultimate question that we're looking for the answer for. We're not too far away from starting to answer that question, but still, before we can get to that point, let's give you a recap of the season thus far and what we've still got lying in wait. And as we can see, we started off on what was the 5th of July, all the way back then, approximately just almost 2 months ago now, at the Watkins Glen International Circuit. And starting in the United States of America, it's only fitting that we return to the US of A to wrap things up. In the state of New York, we got to see an absolute thriller, and in particular, it was the thriller at the front of the field in the battle of the LMDH class, with Nick Clibbins from iRace eSports leading for the majority of the race, only to see it end in disaster with only 30 minutes to go, and we got Azz Williams picking up the pieces by comparison for NXTGEN Racing Purple. And then in round number 2, we made our way to Belgium for the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. On the 19th of July, it was all about the charge of the Cadillacs in the LMDH class, but elsewhere in the other classes, we got to see in the LMP3 class, whereas it did go the way of what was Michael Paul for Ignition Motorsport at Watkins Glen. Meanwhile, Stefan Vessel's in absolute point for CSA Endurance alongside teammate Matt Shorter in the LMP3 class, and balancing out the field there in the second round of the season. Then in round number 3, we made our way to the Circuito de Jerez in Spain. And on the second of all, we got to see for absolutely thrilling racing there, in the fact we got to see dominance in the LMP3 class from CSA Endurance once again, but we also got to see the charge in the battle for the victory in the LMDH class, and it was neck and neck between Azz Williams and Nick Clibbins, between NXTGEN Racing Purple and iRace eSports, when then iRace eSports being able to find a way through it the third time of asking, but you had to be there to believe it, with the strategic blunder that was made in the end by NXTGEN Racing Purple, which saw iRace eSports pick up the pieces when it all seems to be falling apart, but they managed to put it back together. And also we got to see there the crowning of our LMP2 class champions, Azz Tech Racing. They made it 3 wins out of 3, and whilst the class was relatively bereft of drivers, still they had to deliver every result and get the car on home, and it was an early championship crown for them. And then last time out in round number 4, we were at the Circuit Charles Villeneuve on the North American continent in Canada, and there we got to see at the Montreal City Circuit on the 16th of August our drivers do battle once again, and well, in particular it was in the LMDH class we saw the intense battling between our drivers, with iRace eSports and missing out on the opportunity to take the win with an open lap instant. And meanwhile, things being funny points now, with NXTGEN Racing Purple trailing behind, as we'll see in the championship standings shortly, but also regaining some lost ground. And in the GT3 class we got to see an absolute absolute Herculean effort from Alex Meredith for coming to eMotorsport UK, but it wasn't enough to get him ahead of SR Technic Endurance, who are able to come home with the victory and set themselves up to try and take the crown away from the Britain going into the season finale. But today is the 30th of August, and that means it is time for us to go racing one last time at the Circuit of the Americas, and let's give you a recap of those championship standings after 4 rounds, and here they are. We started with the LMDH class, and as we can see, iRace eSports lead the way at 172 points, 36 of NXTGEN Team Purple. But the battle between the two teams here, with a 36-point gap, it's not fully explained or indeed shown in terms of the intensity, as whilst iRace eSports may be the favourites to take the championship crown as of today, the point being that they drop it at all, NXTGEN Team Purple will be there to try and take the crown away, and it only takes a couple of lost points in order to trigger that in terms of places on the grid. Meanwhile, in P3, NXTGEN Benjamin McCluskey, or NXTGEN BM, as we also like to abbreviate them to in P3, well, they've got an opportunity to potentially take P2, but it is out of arm's reach for them to take the championship crown here unless results go massively against iRace eSports and NXTGEN Racing Team Purple. Both teams would need to retire before the halfway distance and not score any points, and also on top of that, NXTGEN BM would need to score the fastest lap point in qualifying and also the race, and they'd also need to take the victory to pull off a surprise shock at the top of the standings. Meanwhile, Azz Tech Racing Black in P4 on 110 points, they'll be looking to try and take the fight to NXTGEN at BM, with an advantage in return of what is 55 points out of a NXTGEN Racing Pink who complete your top 5. It's a Sim Racing Collective 99, EMP6 they're on 52 points, 5 clear NXTGEN Pinky JD, then we have Crest Autosport and Josh Brown Motorsport completing the standings. Now coming on to the LMP2 class, we can see Azz Tech Racing have already taken the championship crown. We're around to spare with 208 points to the 90 of Azz Tech Racing White. Well, the key thing for Azz Tech Racing today is they'll be looking to make it 5 wins out of 5, as they've picked up 4 thus far and have been absolutely flawless from round to round. And meanwhile, NXTGEN Darkside Racing at round off the championship standings out on 0 points, and I do believe that Mark Sykes and NXTGEN Darkside Racing has switched to the LMP3 class for this season finale. Speaking of the LMP3 class, we have CSA Endurance here on 156 points. They have a 26-point advantage over Speed 9 Esports B, and they are your 2 main battlers in this championship now. And the logic being here that CSA Endurance just need to bring it on home and bring on home a podium finish in order to take the crown. But Speed 9 Esports B will need to take victory, and they'll need to see CSA Endurance fall well outside the podium places if they want to try and take that crown away. But you never know what can happen. It's not over until that final checkered flag falls. And in P3, Ignium Motorsport, they're on 127 points. When they find themselves a further 3 points back, albeit I do believe not in the 10th today, and therefore that's where they'll stay come the season finale. Crystal Autosport in at P4 on 110 points. They got a 40-point advantage over Black Flag Bandits, with Speed9 Esports PW, in reference to Paul Williams there, joined on 70 points, but outside the top 5 based on result countback. And then we do have Eden Motorsport Spark, GT Watson Motorsport, Thurston Racing, and Paul Scott team for completing the standings. And well, right now it does look as though it's going to be a very tight one at the top of the field to see who are going to be our winners there, and also the fight to be inside the top 5 when all is said and done. And then coming on to the GT3 class, last but not least, we can see Chemical eMotorsport UK lead the way by 25 points over SR Technic Endurance. But then again, we do know that the European team of SR Technic Endurance are very keen to try and take that crown away. And Chemical eMotorsport UK will know all about that. All they need to do is finish behind SR Technic Endurance, and they've got the job done. I'm going to show you one thing. Alex Meredith would love to take this championship crown with a win, given the fact he put in a winner's drive last time out at the Montreal circuit, albeit it wasn't enough given the blunder with regards to the amount of fuel in the car when he went to the grid. Meanwhile, FR20 Sim Racing Yellow in P3 on 92 points, and they're safe now to take that P3 position, or are they, with only 42 points over Chemical eMotorsport PT, in reference to the Portuguese division of the team. And also keep your eyes out for Chemical eMotorsport, the base team, on 45 points, who are also looking to try and finish inside the top 5 and bring on home some key results, staying in order in their championship campaign on a high. We then have team at Matthew T. Davies in P6, only outside the top 5 based on result countback, with a 10-point advantage over Tubby Bye Bye Racing. Now, Core Blimey Racing 113, RUR02, and Rossum's Universal Rowers completing the standings. But going from our standings into our circuit for today, well, it's none other than the Circuit of the Americas Grand Prix Circuit. Located near the city of Austin in Travis County of Texas in the United States of America. As you can see from the circuit map provided us by iRacing.com, and thank you to them for their wonderful simulator and the circuit maps that come with it, this is a highly complicated circuit, in the fact that with our 20 corners over the yardage that the circuit makes up, it is a circuit that brings together some of the very best elements of circuits around the globe, whether it be the Maggots into Beckett's sweeping section of Silverstone, or alternatively some of the tighter arena sections of the Hockenheimring in Germany. Well, indeed, those two courses being 2 of many which are featured here effectively or replicated, and therefore this is a circuit that borrows from many in order to create a a thrilling race venue of its own. And designed by Hermann Tilke, well, Hermann Tilke has been a bit of a controversial figure when it comes to circuit design over the years, with some saying his circuits are pretty much coming off of a printing press with regards to they're all quite the same. They've all got to have a 1 kilometre long straight at some point. Speaking of which, we do have one running from turn 11 down towards turn 12, but this one is a little bit different in the fact it's got a wide amount of variety, but it's also got a very unique road surface design in the fact that the run to the apex of most corners is wider than on your typical racing circuit, and you'll see this in particular in the run out of turn 9 up towards turn 11, and also the run through turns 12 through to 19, and this is all in the name of promoting overtaking. But as our drivers make the way on around the circuit, they'll charge across the start finish line and up the hill towards turn number 1. A very high rise there as they make their way into the uphill braking zone for the opening hairpin. They extend the corner, extend the sweep through turn number 2 flat out up towards the S sequence of turns 3, 4, 5 and 6. But as our drivers make their way through the first 3 of those corners, they'll suddenly find that the average apex speed comes crashing down, and particularly when they get to turn number 7, it's an uphill rise into left-hander, and then they've got to be smart on the brakes as they want to carry the speed on through, but also avoid any potential understeer and making the way off circuit. The same can be said for turns 8 to 9, where the average apex speed continues to wind its way down, but as they exit turn number 9, it's a flat-out charge through turn number 10 and down towards the hairpin at turn number 11. Get it right there as they head onto the brakes. They'll try to get back to the throttle as soon as possible to charge their way down the back straight towards turn number 12. Then heading into the final hairpin of the circuit, they'll make their way through the left-hander and up towards turns 13 and 14. We're now already in the stadium or the arena section as our drivers concertining their way through turns 13 and 14 into 15 and 16. We could see some major overtaking opportunities arise, and then making their way for the long double right-hander at turns 17 and 18. It's the charge towards turn 19, an off-camber corner which has got wide track limits, but indeed if our drivers go beyond the white lines, they'll very quickly put themselves up a penalty, and well, they'll need to get it absolutely right there and head up towards the final corner, turn number 20, onto the brakes there for the sharp left-hand right-angle corner. They'll clear the corner and make their way onto the next lap, and well, could we see a few drivers get it wrong? Plenty of runoff areas, however, no close walls at this circuit for the most part, so therefore it's quite a forgiving circuit, but at the same time, those track limits are an absolute nightmare to get absolutely right lap after lap. Consistency is going to be key. As we come onto our rules for today, in terms of setup, this is an open setup series where our teams may bring setups of their choice to each and every round, and each team may consist of 1 to 2 drivers. Teams may not switch car within class, and teams may change car class at any point, but will forfeit all points previously accrued. And as we said earlier, we're going to see NXTGEN Darkside Racing. They've moved their way from LMP2 to LMP3 for today. Qualifying-wise, an open qualifying format shall be used. This is the tradition of this league, where the first 12 minutes shall be dedicated to the GT3 class, and the final 12 minutes shall be dedicated to the prototype classes, the LMDH, the LMP2, and the LMP3s. And coming on to the race rules specifically, the race shall commence by a rolling start in a designated green flag zone, and that's coming out of the final corner to the start-finish line, with drivers having 3 faster pairs available today. A driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 40 or more instant points, and we could definitely see some drive-through penalties here today. That may just shake up proceedings somewhat, and drivers are mandated to make at least 1 pit stop in which they must take on fuel, but changing tyres is optional. And if our teams are made up of 2 drivers, they must swap drivers at some point during the race, even if the number 2 driver is only to do 1 lap of the racing. But that's enough rules, regulation, everything in between. You're here for the racing, and as we make our way back to the live circuit side pictures, where we do look to none other than Nick Clibbins as he makes his way there on down the back straight and up towards turn number 12. And right now, the iRace eSports driver knows that destiny is in his control today in terms of he is the favourite to take the LMDH class championship, but he needs to get it home, and that's the most important part here, is just bringing the car home safe and sound, and also he's got to finish at least 1 place behind the NXTGEN Racing Purple driver of Gaz Williams if he wants to get this done. But as he makes his way there, practicing going through at the stadium section, it's not just about the battle in the LMDH class today, we also do have, as we look to the LMP3 class, there's your championship leaders, Stefan Vessel's behind the wheel of the CSA Endurance when it's there, the Allegia P320 machine. As he makes his way on around right now, he'll know that the task here today is to keep it smart, to keep it sensible, and don't make any major errors. And if he can get away with that, well, the one thing we have seen from CSA Endurance all the way through this season is the fact they've been absolutely faultless. The only time they've been with fault was in the season opener at Watkins Glen, but beyond that, they've not made a single mistake this season. They have been absolutely on point and been the team to beat. And well, as he makes his way on down the back straight. His rival of what is Speed9 Esports B. They're currently in the pit lane, and there is Mark, well, not Mark Sykes, my apologies. As we see Mark Sykes there is parked up, but we're looking more towards what is Mark Baker. In fact, not currently available. He is currently out of the car, and the car's not in the pit lane. But we do see Mark Sykes who's made the switch to the next gen dark side racing machine in the LMP3 class in the number 666 for the season finale, and good luck to him on his debut in the LMP3 class. And then we look to the GT3 class, and as we can see here, Alex Meredith making his way on around right now, and well, Meredith will know that he has got a task of his own to do here. We haven't seen any sign of SR Technic Endurance making the way to the pit lane thus far, so it could all be done before it even goes into qualifying today if they don't arrive, or at least come the end of qualifying. But we will see the session locked in terms of who can then make the way onto the grid. So right now Alex Meredith will be thinking only about delivering what he can, and well, he'll find out when he goes to the grid whether we'll see SR Technic Endurance on the grid. But I think he'll be absolutely itching to go racing with them, and well, we'll look forward to seeing how that plays out with regards to the drivers. But as we do get ready to go racing, ladies and gentlemen, we are now only 10 seconds away from going into what will be the final qualifying session of the season, and well, it's definitely going to be one where everyone will be looking to try and set their best possible times one final time today. As we do apologise there for the fact you've just seen the overlay briefly refresh itself, but don't be alarmed, that's not on your TV or turn to your PC, it's on our end. We just had to update some driver data. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the final qualifying session of this season. And as our 25 minutes get underway, and we do say hello there to John Meredith in the Facebook chat, who undoubtedly will be cheering on Alex Meredith today, while drivers making their way on out of the pit lane. In fact, we do see Gaz Williams immediately making his way on out there. So I do believe, in fact, we may be seeing all of our classes out on circuit in this session, or at least the prototypes going out first by looks of things, which is a little bit of the reverse of the order we were expecting. But still, perhaps things have been mixed up given the fact that we've got such a limited number of cars here today, in terms of the fact we've only got 12 teams in attendance right now in qualifying, and as Williams makes his way on through, well, the big question you may be wondering at this point is, what do you need to do in order to deliver a pole position out of the circuit of the Americas? Well, there's no real one thing you need to do around here as a driver in terms of how you set up the car, albeit there is one thing that will make sure your lap is valid, and that is keep within the rather obnoxious track limits around here. And we say obnoxious for the fact that the track limits around this circuit are some of the hardest in terms of how well they're policed by the automated iRacing stewarding system. Indeed, in the real world, they are policed extremely so, because as some of you may have noticed when we've been making our way around the circuit watching some of our drivers, with most of the circuit being open in terms of the runoff areas are not followed up by solid barriers for quite some distance, and with those runoff areas, which are mostly asphalt as well, albeit perhaps less grippy compared to the core circuit. The point being, if you run a little bit deeper a corner, or you run a bit wide as you get on the power to exit the corner, you can actually gain lap time as a result, and therefore that's why track limit policing has to be so strict around here in order to prevent drivers gaining an unfair advantage by running the slightest bit wide. And so for our drivers, it will all be about pushing as much as you possibly can to those track limits without breaching them, and that's where the frustration comes in, and that's where it's very easy to start to pick up off tracks. And indeed, when we go racing, that's where we see our drivers start to accrue those instant points, which could lead to a subsequent drive-through penalty. But as we do see the NXTGEN Racing Purple LMDH BMW M V8 Hybrid making its way out towards the end of its warm-up lap, we're going to ride on board with Williams in the near future for what will be his flying lap, albeit not in the first one, given the fact he'll be keying himself up for what will be an opening flying lap, and the tyres and the brakes will be relatively cold. But as he heads on through, we do look to none other than Mark Baker, the Speed9 Esports B driver, making his way there through turn number 16 and up towards 17 he goes. And as he does so here through the double right-hander, running the wonderful Bentley colours there, as Speed9 Esports know how to do best so, in reference to Bentley's legendary performances in particularly endurance racing over the years, and will the Speed 8 machines, and that's where the livery has been taken from. And as he makes his way up towards the final corner here, where we get himself set to go into his first flying lap in the LMP3 class machine. And in terms of the relative time deltas today, we do believe that the LMDHs are approximately 5 to 6 seconds faster than the LMP2, which is conversely only about 4 seconds faster than the LMP3s, and then it'll be the LMP3s that'll be on roughly similar pace to the GT3s, although I think there might be a second or two between them, given the fact the LMP3s have the greater downforce, and well, downforce is going to prove quite critical here, particularly in the opening half of the lap and also the final quarter, where you do have those large constitutions of corners, as we do see Meredith making his way through there in at the opening part of the screen, and then we do see following on through none other than Speed9 Esports B's Mark Baker as he heads on around. Remember, he is one of the two contenders for the LMP3 Class Championship today, and well, he is the current second place contender and trying to turn around and make an upset occur. But meanwhile, speaking of a team that don't want any upsets here, they just want it to be smooth. Well, here is Stefan Vessels for CSA Endurance as he makes his way on down towards turn number 11 there and going through left-hander and up the rise he goes. We're going through turn number 12, I should say, into turn 13, and as he comes up through the right-hand hairpin there, we can see the very tight runs to the apexes between turns 14, 15, and then into 16. A very deceptive braking zone there, turn number 16. And I don't think the third-person pictures really give you that perspective until you ride on board. And speaking of which, we will have an on-board lap coming up very shortly. In fact, as we see Gaz Williams gradually creep into the final corner, we jump on board here with Williams for a flying lap of the Circuit of the Americas in the LMDH class. And up towards the timeline and onwards towards turn number 1, building his way up to 170 miles an hour before he goes onto the brakes, braking about 125 metres from corner apex uphill first gear, and now exiting immediately back to full throttle as he comes through turn number 2 flat out here through the right hander. Now getting set for the S-Serpentine sequence. He goes into turn number 3 flat out, lift off the throttle for 4, hold the throttle off for 5, drop a gear into turn number 6, getting nice and tight initially, then bring the car back to apex, drop another gear to third gear, and into turn number 7, left into right left now as he goes into turn number 8, drops down to second, just winding the speed down, then exiting turn number 9, a little bit of oversteer there on power, but collects it together nicely, flat out through 10 and up towards the turn 11 hairpin. Now braking near approximately 150 metres from corner apex, wide open to the apex there as he now heads out of the corner in first gear and charging down the back straight. He can take a brief breather as he heads up to some of the high speeds you'll see on the circuit today, and we're going up into 6th gear, not quite top gear yet, getting ready for 7th gear if he can reach it, but he will be going into the next braking zone from 7th gear, braking down from 184 miles an hour, braking 150 metres in the turn at 12 apex, down to first gear and now up towards turn number 13, going onto the brakes nice and early here, all the way down to second gear, very early apex there, gets the rotation of the car hooked up, through 14 to 15, and now trail braking to turn 16, but you notice there, you have to go for a very late apex, so you can't be deceived by the early apex, which is visible on the curve, and as he comes up through the double right now, turn 17 and 18, lifting off the throttle there, letting the car rotate in before return to full throttle, needing to keep the car in the middle of the road as he brings it over to the right hand side now for turn number 19, just a dab of the brake, third gear in the rear of the car, let's go, but he catches it just in time, albeit for Williams. I think that might be a trip to the pits there in order to put on a new set of tyres, but that's what happens when you push it a little bit too far. But Williams did, I think, would feel he was on a fast lap, but it didn't quite work out, as meanwhile we look to our sole Cadillac in the LMDH class today, none other than Azz Tech Racing at Black's Jake Pitt as he makes his way up towards turn number 12, goes a bit deep there for lockup, albeit keeps the car on circuit as he heads onwards towards turn number 13. But Williams not quite able to get a lap on the board there with that mistake at turn number 19. It's very easy to make that mistake. It's not the case that he's made it and others will not. I suspect we're going to see plenty of drivers have mistakes going out to some of the corners. And meanwhile, as they roar the way on through, we have had confirmation this qualifying session will be with all cars together today, and that's what you've seen them all out then. I think it has been decided by our stewards that given the fact we do only have 12 teams in participation currently, and therefore we can get away with all the classes being out there together. And well, meanwhile, as we look to Azz Meacham coming on through what is turn at number 13 with the Crest Autosport LMP3 driver here in the very interesting liveried machine with all the different colours there of splendour. Well, right now, Meacham definitely trying to end his season on a high as he comes in towards turn 17 and 18. These LMP3 machines have a lot less downforce compared to their counterparts, but the key point being with them in the fact that these cars are really the entry point to racing prototypes, and will they have a lot of downforce at their fingertips. They've also got a very powerful V8 engine, only slightly less horsepower compared to a GT3, so therefore they do lose out in the long run on the extended straights. And you will see that to extend the start for the straight, but more importantly on the 1 kilometre back straight. But for the most part, the GT3 will just fall behind a little bit as they are not quite able to carry as much speed from corner to corner, particularly in the opening half of the lap. But the Crest Autosport LMP3 driver there goes P3 on a 203.289, and will currently 3 seconds off of the pole lap step by CSA Endurance. He'll know there's quite a bit of time still to be found. The same for Speed9 Esports in the form of Paul Williams there as he makes his way on through. And we're looking right now at the driver from the top team of Speed9 Esports, with there being Speed9 Esports A or just Speed9 Esports, which Williams is, and then we have Speed9 Speed 9 eSports B in the form of Baker, and then we have Speed 9 eSports C, which is in the form of Mike Riedner. Well, that's how they're divided, and the three drivers all out here today to enjoy the racing. And speaking of Mike Riedner, well, here he is right now, albeit I believe the livery not quite loading on the car there, and we do apologise for that, ladies and gentlemen. There have been a few complications with our livery loading software over the course of the last couple of days, and any of you do follow the world of iRacing, you know about what's happened with Trading Paints recently with their security compromise, their compromised security, I should say, but that does seem to be gradually under investigation now and potentially on the mend in the near future. Meanwhile, as we do see Riedner making his way on through turn 17 and 18, their wonderful camera shot from above from the spectator tower going on through the stadium section. Now coming down into turn at number 19, well, we do see the number 11 driver here. Currently no lap on the board, but looking to get one come the end of this lap as NXTGEN Racing go P5 on the 207.551. Speed 9 eSports B moves P3 on the 203.267. What's Riedner able to do? He goes P5 on the 205.912. So I think Finn as though there's at least 2 seconds out there, as he'll want to try and get a bit closer to his teammates and try and at least get 2 of the cars onto the podium, if not all 3. But meanwhile, we do look back to the engagement in the LMP2 class, and well, here is Matthew Jolly, and well, I do believe that today it may be the Azz Tech Racing also not having their livery displaying due to the livery issues we talked about only months ago with respect to Trading Paints, but still making the way on down there towards turn at number 12 and heading into the braking zone. And well, the number 96 driver here, 9, this championship is all said and done. There's a bit of a lock up there, and the car wobbling under braking in terms of fact, not steady, a bit of oversteer on the rear end and having to settle it down as it squirmed. And well, right now, Johnny just knowing that all he needs to do today is bring up the car in a home and make it 5 wins out of 5 on the way. Albeit Azz Tech Racing White with Dylan Mystery behind the wheel would love to have an opportunity of taking a win of their own. Well, neither of the LMP2 teams right now have got a lap on the board, and we're waiting to see what they're able to do. As we do look to Dylan Mystery making his way on around through turn 17 and 18 now, and as he comes on down towards turn number 19, getting himself acquainted with the car. We did have the opportunity to catch up with him after last round and got to hear his faults on really getting to grips with the machine racing on around the Montreal circuit, as he has a brief lock up there into the final corner, where it's not going to be too alarming of a lock up, as we do see Azz Tech Racing there setting the first time on the board, and that is a 56.664. And meanwhile, what can Azz Tech Racing might do in response? As they head across the line, it's not a valid lap, as it was an out lap in fact, and they lock up there into turn number 1, just keep the car in track limits, but that's a lock up you don't want to have. As meanwhile, we do look from them to what is none other than Alex Meredith, as he makes his way out of turn, what is turn number 1 and down towards 2, 3, and the Porsche 992 GT3 driver, I think, will feel as though that right now the pressure is off to a major extent with the absence of SR Technic Endurance, but at the same time as well, I think the Commuter eMotorsport UK driver will be a little bit gutted in the fact, well, if it's just going to be him and what is his sister team in the form of Commuter eMotorsports, Bernardo Colbe on the grid, we won't be able to fight for that championship win in the end. It will naturally come, as he will inherit it by default, given the fact he's championship leader going into tonight, but still, he'll take what comes his way, and the number 2 driver right now, and definitely eager just to get that lap on the board. It's 206.139, and he's on an out lap currently as he gets himself set to go a bit deeper into this qualifying session. But heading on down the back straight here, building up the speed once again. Well, right now we do have a couple of teams in the pit lane, including Azz Tech Racing, also CSA Endurance and Crest Autosport LMP3. For the LMP3 teams, there are the 2 of them, Azz Tech Racing LMP2. But for the most part, we do have all of our teams out on the circuit currently, all putting in the best possible laps they can, and are really getting used to this qualifying session. And well, speaking of which, you may be wondering about the conditions we're experiencing here today. And as we can see, it is a 25 degrees centigrade at track temperature currently, and was an ambient temperature of 19 degrees centigrade, so relatively cool conditions, albeit it is normally quite hot in Texas, as I've been informed, even when it is the early hours of the morning. And well, right now, all the drivers trying to steer clear of the danger of heat and instead focusing on keeping things cool, calm and collected as they make their way into the second half of this qualifying session. But definitely right now, the track conditions kinder compared to what they could be, and therefore this may just give our drivers a little bit of creature comfort when it comes to how this circuit may evolve over time, given the cool conditions right now. But as we go into the race, they may start to get warmer, and therefore we could see that tyre degradation rate really start to pick up. But as we do see Meredith making his way across the timeline, we jump on board here with Porsche 992 driver as he takes us round for a lap in the GT3 class machine. as he heads up the hill in towards turn number 1 and onto the brakes here for the left-hander. You can see there being quite aggressive, leaning into the ABS as he comes down the hill and into turn number 2. Flat out, but has to open the corner up there in order to carry all the speed. Now going into turns 3, 4 and 5, you'll see less downforce in the GT3, means he can really siphon turn 3, but has to lift early for turn 4, holds off the throttle in turn number 5, and now winding his way into turn number 6, drops a gear between the two apexes, or coming in to the left-hander in turn number 7, balance the throttle there in 3rd gear, now bring the car back over to the left and just stay off the throttle, down to 2nd, bring the throttle back in, and he settles the car 2nd gear up to 3rd there as he exits turn number 9, and now down through turn number 10, flat out here up to 4th gear, and in towards 11. Now getting ready for the braking zone for the next hairpin, braking at about 150 metres from corner apex, all the way down the 1st gear, very late apex there, trail braking in, very smooth line from Meredith as he heads on down the back straight, building up the speed up to 4th gear here in the Porsche. Not only known for its straight line speed based on the current balance of force, but it is known for its handling. As he gets ready to head in towards the braking zone for turn in number 12, looks to his right side for his markers. We hear the turbo starting to whine and braking his way down from 155 miles an hour from the 120 metre mark, coming all the way down to 1st gear. Now exiting the corner and up towards turn number 13, but again having to bring the car immediately over to the left hand side to open up the right hand hairpin. And as he exits out now, plenty of apex go for turn number 14. Now heading into turn 15, trail brake there as he clears 15 to set himself up for the late apex at turn 16. You can briefly hear the tyres sliding there under braking, and that means he's broken a little bit too late. And as he goes through at the right hander of what is turn number 17 and 18, and all the way up towards turn number 19. Well, in fact, it's a flat 6 there, it's not a turbo. We do apologise for that for the wide off the engine. And going through turn number 19 up towards 20 and going in towards the braking zone right now. Meredith all set, but going a bit deep there down to 1st gear, and we'll exit at the corner now and up towards the timeline. It hasn't been the cleanest of laps from Alex Meredith. I think this may not be an improvement compared to his previous best, and he is a 10th off his best. 206.230 there versus 206.139, but definitely right now trying to do everything he can to improve. And well, as he goes on to another lap, we should point out there the reason we're thinking of a turbo is because we're thinking of the other car that was available to our GT3 drivers this season, the BMW M4 GT3, which definitely does have the turbo with it. But meanwhile, the Porsche being powered by a flat 6 that does rev out quite high, and that's why you can hear the whining of the car. And we'll appreciate you there, Stefan, in the YouTube chat, giving me a quick pointer with regards to since when does the Porsche GT3 have a turbo. But as you do see Meredith making his way on around this time, well, Stefan Vessel's right now in the pit lane and taking his time there in order to get himself set, I think, for going out once more if he feels threatened by the laps further on the field. But speaking of the LMP3 class, we do look to Baz Meacham as he heads in towards turn at number 12, and as he comes on through left-hander right now, I think Meacham will feel as though it's still early days here in terms of this qualifying session with just under 10 minutes remaining, plus that final lap in qualifying. And you'll know there's still 8 attempts to find versus the Speedline eSports pair of what is the main team and also the B team, and that's Paul Williams and Mark Baker in the respective teams. But the Crest Autosport LMP3 drive definitely has come on strong over the course of the season in the LMP3 class, and we've seen plenty from him over the last couple of rounds where he's been really mixing it up in the battle for the last spot of the podium, albeit as he comes down into turn number 19 right now. He'll be hoping he can just find that time sooner rather than later, as time is gradually trickling away in this qualifying session, and he won't want to leave it too late. As he heads on through at the final corner and up towards turn at number 1. Well, right now this is not going to be an improving lap as such, and we'll speak of improving laps. Nick Clemens trying to find an improving lap. He has gone purple in sector 3, albeit he is in sector number 4 now, and in fact backing the car off entirely, just taking his time and cruising on through turns 17 and 18. He does have a car coming up behind him you have to be wary of, and I believe that is the car of Mark Baker, the Speedline eSports B LMP3, getting ready to make its way up behind, so therefore he can't dawdle for too long. Clemens in fact starting to get the gas down as he goes on to a new lap, and his target will be to try and push himself higher in terms of that pole position. It's currently at the battle of the BMWs at the top of the NXTGEN class, so 51.187 to beat as set by iRace eSports, and right now Clemens for the team trying to go even further and perhaps trying to break in to those high 50s, but he won't be if he misses his brake marker there and instead locks up on the braking into turn number 1, and that's going to be an aborted lap before he even gets through into turn at number 2. And as he heads on towards the S sequence here, that wonderful camera shot that shows you just how they have to go through multiple direction changes in quick succession at a distance. And well, Clemens right now getting himself set for the next lap. Meanwhile, Gaz Williams heading out of turn number 16 and through 1780 goes, the double right-hander here, and he has set a personal best in sector 3, albeit I think right now 9 there's plenty more time out there to be accrued, and well, 2 attempts is the mark he needs to try and find as he heads in towards turn number 20 onto the brakes here. As he exits the corner, the BMW, which we're going to be seeing on the grid next year in the endurance category for the LMDH class, and as he makes his way across the line, well, he does go purple there. He goes at pole position on 50.807, so Williams delivering, albeit now the gap between him and iRace eSports is Nick Clemens is 4 tenths in the other direction. And well, is that enough from Williams? I think Clemens will look at that very shortly, hear about it if he hasn't already, and think to himself, okay, I've got my work to do here, and this is not going to come naturally. But do keep in mind, he only needs to finish behind NXTGEN Racing Purple to take that championship crown, as we're to understand it, so therefore a bit less pressure on than he would perhaps expect to have, but at the same time the number 13 driver would prefer to get this championship crown done the only way that it can be done best, and that is by winning the final race of the season to take the crown, and that's the best feeling in the world, I can tell you that, as he makes his way into turn number 20. As he makes his way on through and up towards turn number 1 he goes. Meanwhile, we do look to Mark Baker, as Baker heads his way up towards turn 20 right now into the left-hander. And we're not currently improving, but we will look to improve on the next lap. And we jump on board here with Baker as he heads up towards turn number 1. As he does, you'll hear that V8 roar up the hill. Going into the opening braking zone there, braking about 140 metres from corner apex, first gear as he clears the opening corner. Smooth driving now down to turn number 2. Flat out here as he takes quite an aggressive run into an early apex. Then turns 3, 4 and 5, much like the GT3, you'll see him wind the speed down here. 5th gear through the first 2 corners, drops to 4th, gets very close to the apex of turn number 6. In fact, that has to readjust his line midway through the first apex. You can see letting the car go deep to get a tighter second apex. Through 7 and into 8 here, coming a lot of speed is Baker, being bold with regards to his braking zone, and through 9 in 2nd gear. Now hitting the rev limiter before going up to 3rd gear, through into 4th and down towards turn number 11, and heading up towards 5th gear before getting ready for his brake marker and braking about 110 metres from corner apex. Gets a nice smooth approach to the apex, and now first gear on exit 2, wheels in the white lines as he makes his way on down the back straight and heading up towards turn number 12, building the speed here, and as he gets ready for the next braking zone, we will see our LMP3 drivers start to hit their maximum as they make their way down the straight here and get ready for his brake marker. 3, 2, 1, and it will be on the brakes there, approximately 125 metres from corner apex. Misses apex slightly there, you notice the car went slightly deep, brings it over to the left hand side gradually, but I think it feels that's going to be a bit of a compromised lap for Mark Baker as he comes on through turn number 13, very tight to the apex there. Will carry on this lap, but definitely not the way he's waited to go going to this second half of lap after a good start as he makes his way out to turn at number 16. In 17-18 he goes. We see Jane Pitt there pulled over to the side in the Cadillac LMDH, and Baker making his way through turn 17 and 18 through the double right-hander and down towards 19. All about direction change here as he comes through the left and almost towards turn number 20, hitting the apex curve, the race sausage curve in particular, unsettling the car, but now braking at about 100 metres from corner apex down to 2nd gear. A bit of oversteer there when he's come off the brakes and come down all the gears and heading to the timeline. Boy, it's been a difficult second half of the lap, and I think for Baker, if he was able to have a smooth second half like he did the first half of the lap, then he might have been able to contest that P2 versus his sister team driver of Paul Williams for Speedline eSports, but right now still staying in P3 as he makes his way through turn number 2. Meanwhile, we do look to our LMP2 class. And Dylan Mystery here in the number 390 car for Azz Tech Racing White, heading up towards turn at number 12 and currently positioned P2 in the LMP2 class, will be at 7.6 seconds off the pole sitters at Azz Tech Racing. We'll lock up there into turn at number 12. That's not going to help the tyres or the front brakes, and more Mystery right now a degree off the pace it would seem compared to his rivals, but then he makes his way on around. In fact, quite down towards the back of the field, the only cars that have put lap times in in this qualifying session, which will be starting behind him with things finished in terms of the qualifying session right now, will be the GT3 pole sitter Alex Meredith, and then it will be the LMP3 P6 car of Mark Sykes for next gen at Darkside Racing. But I will have the rest of the LMP3 class between Azz Tech Racing White's Dylan Mystery and Azz Tech Racing's Matthew Jolly, the pole sitter in the LMP2 class as things stand. But still, Mystery building up that experience in the car, and the only way to build up experience is to get lap time in, so therefore there's no shame in doing what he's doing in terms of putting in those laps as he makes his way across the timeline. And well, for the Azz Tech Racing White driver, goes on to another lap here, as meanwhile just behind, well in fact on his way on through with his turn number 11 there and on to 12. We can see Matthew Jolly making his way on down the back straight right now and building his way up the gearbox in the Dallara P217 LMP2 machine, and roaring his way all the way through here. And well, so I can tell you one thing, with the V8 engine of that car, absolutely phenomenal performance. And keep in mind, there's no ABS, no anti-lock braking system to talk about, so all the braking has to be modulated by the driver as he heads his way into turn number 13. And that's where the art of braking these cars are. The only cars on this grid that you'll see with anti-lock braking systems will be the GT3s, albeit we can tell you that the LMP3s and the LMP2s do have their own traction control systems as well, much like with the GT3, albeit the traction control for the LMP3 is a very basic one in terms of it does a small amount of work at lower speeds, but beyond that not too much, as we see Azz Tech Racing's Matthew Jolly go straight on there. Well, he's going to make his way back to the pit lane, and that'll be his qualifying session done, as he won't be able to get another lap in with just over a minute to go. But meanwhile, iRace eSports, well, they've decided to throw in the towel early in the LMDH pole position battle. They're 4 tenths off and not quite able to find a way to get back at NXTGEN Racing Purple, and Gaz Williams right now trying to go even faster with his first sector being a purple sector, but the rest of the lap thus far has not been purple. In fact, it's been less compared to his previous best, albeit I think run on very fine margins here as he makes way through turn number 19. And then up towards the timeline, Williams right now heading on to the brakes here. Through the left-hander he goes, and will Willie be able to find a bit more time here? Try and put that pole lap even higher. It is the only 50 that we've seen. Indeed he does. It's a 50.743. So NXTGEN Racing Purple, I think, now locking this qualifying session down with only 30 seconds to go, and simply saying, we're coming for you, iRace eSports, and you're going to need to be on your best performance if you want that championship crown. But Williams are taking what is that pole position, and meanwhile Baz Meacham making his way into the pit lane for Crest Autosport LMP3, as Azz Tech Racing at White have improved to a 202.907, so that puts them into P8 in the overall grid. Still be splitting the LMP3 field, but meanwhile Mike Friedner, the last driver here on what will be a lap for the LMP3 class, he makes his way up towards turn number 12, heading onto the brakes. So you can see just gradually bringing the car off racing line there to turn in nice and early, and the idea being you want to try and point and flex the car towards the apex curve in order to carry that little bit of extra momentum and shorten that lap time down as he makes his way on towards turn at number 16. On to the brakes he goes here, and we can see just clipping that apex curve. The idea is wants to clip it but not cut too much of it, as well as the track limits will immediately invalidate the lap. And again, it is that fine balancing act in terms of absolutely knowing just how much of each and every apex curve and runoff area you can cut or utilise versus knowing when it's time to back off. Friedner heading up towards the final corner here, as he is our last driver out on circuit, and he'll wrap up our qualifying session for today. And as he comes out of the final corner, what's it going to be here for the Speedline Esports C driver? Well, it is going to be still P5. That does not improve, so his previous best of 204.33 stands. But that is qualifying complete, ladies and gentlemen, and well, what a qualifying session it has been in the LMDH class. Pole position going to NXTGEN Racing Purple's Gaz Williams ahead of iRace eSports, and then Jake Pivot Azz Tech Racing at Black behind him in P3. In the LMP2 class, it is 5 pole positions out of 5 this season for Azz Tech Racing White, and they're going to try and go on for what is 5 wins out of 5. In the LMP3 class, it's CSA Endurance who once again take pole position there by 2 seconds in the capable hands of Stefan Vessels over Speedline Esports. And in the GT3 class, it's Chemical E Motorsport UK's Alex Meredith who takes pole position, the only GT3 to get a lap on the board. And I think we might not be seeing the Chemical E Motorsport base team as piloted by Bernardo Colbe on the grid, given they didn't have a lap on the board and did not make their way out into the qualifying session. We'll have to wait and see, ladies and gentlemen, whether they can get that car out onto the grid, for we may have lost a GT3 before we've even gone racing, which if so would be very unfortunate. But as we now just wait for that transition from qualifying to the race, we've still got plenty of racing to come, particularly in the LMDH and the LMP3 classes, and we'll plenty to look forward to as a result. As we do briefly take a breather there and a quick sip of water with it, a splendid day in the state of Texas near Austin. I must admit, very clear skies, a little bit of cloud off in the distance, but nothing too major, so that track temperature will come up underneath the sunshine, and therefore this is going to become quite a warm circuit, albeit the lack of cars on the circuit does mean that as our drivers make the way around, sections of the circuit will gradually cool down, so that track temperature is not going to rise and stay as high as perhaps it would if we had a few more cars on the grid, but still, the point being around here is it is going to be a warm circuit, and our drivers will need to be wary that lockups, and indeed any mistakes when they slide on the circuit may cost them some time life in the long term. But speaking of the long term, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a long term wait, but here is the final grid of the season. So going into round 5 of 5 in Season 3 of the NXTGEN Racing PROTO GT3 Championship hosted on iRacing. It is Azz Williams who takes the final overall and LMDH pole of the season for NXTGEN Racing Purple, joined on the front row by iRace eSports' Nick Clibbins. They'll be battling into turn number 1, I can assure you of that. And then on row number 2, it will be Jake Pitt who rounds off the LMDH class for Azz Tech Racing Black, and he's joined on that row by the LMP2 pole sitter for Azz Tech Racing of Matthew Jolly. Then behind them on row number 3, it's the second place LMP2 of Azz Tech Racing White's Dylan Mystery, followed up by the pole sitter for the LMP3 class for CSA Endurance, and none other than Stefan Vessels behind the wheel. It's then a 2-second gap in terms of qualifying times to P2, P3 in the LMP3 class on row at number 4, with Paul Williams of Speed9 Esports just pipping sister team driver at Speed9 Esports B, Mark Baker, to the prize of P7, and then completing the top 10 on row number 5 is the LMP3 pair of Baz Meacham for Crest Autosport LMP3 and Speed9 Esports C's Mike Riedner. On row number 6, meanwhile, P11, it's Mark Sykes for NXTGEN Darkside Racing, and Alex Meredith takes your GT3 pole position for Chemical E Motorsport. And then last but not least, on the grid, ladies and gentlemen, issues in qualifying, and we hope to see on the grid for our race today, it's Chemical E Motorsport's Bernardo Colbe, who starts P13 of 13, and this grid on row number 7. All of our drivers are just gradually getting themselves set now and in position on the grid, but as they do, we look closer down to the circuit and everybody ready and raring to go here, and we will have a partial formation lap, albeit the formation lap starting in the run down towards turn number 12, about 3/4 down the back straight, so therefore we'll not have a full formation lap, and our drivers will not have plenty of time to get their tyres and brakes up to temperature, so with what limited time they have, they'll need to get the job done quite quickly, as we are only 10 seconds away from going into the partial formation lap, and I do believe that we are currently waiting on what is both Mark Sykes and NXTGEN Racing Darkside and also Bernardo Colbe for Chemical E Motorsport, but neither of them making their way to the grid, and hopefully we will see NXTGEN Darkside Racing take their slot on the grid. If not, then we will have had a further retirement on top of Chemical E Motorsport, as they haven't been able to get the car onto the grid either, so 2 cars perhaps already lost before we've gone green flag racing, albeit we'll have to see here as Williams making his way on down towards turn number 12. As he does so right now, that front row is definitely a very tasty row for the eyes here in terms of the race we're going to expect, as it will be Clibbins versus Williams into turn number 1, and Clibbins will be eager to try and take the lead before they get settled into an order. Remember, both in the BMW M V8 hybrid is, so equal machines, and it all comes down to the setups they're running and the driver, and you also do have the unknown quandary of the Cadillac behind in P3, piloted by Jake Pitt for Azz Tech Racing Black. And we do know that Pitt, whilst not on the pace at the top two, a very consistent driver, and therefore he could pick up the pieces if they end up in a bit of an altercation. Alternatively, one of them gets it wrong, as all our drivers gradually make their way now through the second infield section here. Stefan Vessels, meanwhile, leading the LMP3 class through turns 17 and 18, just gradually bringing them on around here for the final time in terms of formation lap this season. And with the CSA Endurance drive, we're looking to break away as early as possible and just simply run off into the distance for the South African outfit. But will it be that straightforward? Could we see a mistake potentially, albeit we wouldn't wish it on anyone? Indeed, he's been bulletproof all season when it comes to mistakes. Well, that's the question that'll be on everyone's mind. And Alex Meredith, meanwhile, we'll know that SR Technical Endurance are not on the grid, so that championship is his either which way, but he'll want to do it the hard way, which is to get to the end of the race and make it another win. But coming out of the final corner then to take us to green flag racing, it's Azz Williams. He makes his way to the line, and well, now we await the lights. And it's lights down, away we go for the final race of the season, ladies and gentlemen. 2 hours of racing here at the Circuit of the Americas, and up the hill they charge into turn number 1, and Williams under pressure from Clemens already into the opening corners. Clemens intentionally goes a little bit deeper there as they roll off and down the hill towards turn number 2, but Clemens gets the better run out the hairpin and takes the lead of this race. They make the way into turns 3, 4 and 5. Now with that they'll settle down to line astern very quickly. I think reassured by the fact now in the dirty air of one another, there's no real overtaking opportunity, and they'll need to try and keep it calm and collected with cold tyres under their helm. And as they come down through turn 6 into 7 and 8, meanwhile we do see that Paul Williams has had the better start in the LMP3 class and has got ahead of Stefan Vessels in the run up the hill towards turn number 1. And the Speed 9 eSports driver here charging as much as he can. It goes a little bit deep there, coming out of turn number 9. The Vessels already starting to look for the counter attack as they head up towards turn number 11. Going into the braking zone here for the hairpin, wide open on entry to encourage overtaking. The Vessels decides not to go for it this time as they make the way out of turn 11 down towards 12 and charging the way off and through. We ride on board and look back from the rear of the lead LMP3 car from Speed 9 eSports. You can see Vessels there at a distance, half a second away, and well, again he can really start to think about how he plays this early on in this race. In fact, it's a long distance to go, and what we are expecting for our LMP3 drive somewhere in the region of a 2-stop race here today, breaking up into equal 40-minute portions, or they may do a little bit of variance around that depending on how far they want to go on the opening stint as they make the way through turn number 13. Williams, they're going a bit deep. Vessels looking around the outside into 15, can't quite find it. Instead trying to set up a potential cutback run out to 16, but still everybody starting to stagger together here as they make the way in for the double right at 17 and 18 and heading on around here where it's going to be as they were. But meanwhile at the front of the field, after one lap of racing, it will be Nick Clemens who leads onto lap number 2 for iRace eSports ahead of Azz Williams and NXTGEN Racing Purple, and then Azz Tech Racing Black Straight bit further behind in P3 there for the LMDH class. You then do have Matthew Jolly, who is your LMP2 class leader here for Azz Tech Racing, and they've got a sizable gap of almost 10 seconds already over Azz Tech Racing White, who are in P2 down in P19 overall, and between them you do have the LMP3 leader of Paul Williams for Speed 9 eSports, as he does hold what is a half a second advantage over Stefan Vessels for CSA Endurance, with Mark Baker for Speed 9 eSports P behind, and then Baz Meacham at P8 overall, which is P4 in the LMP3 class for Crystal for LMP3, then of Dylan Mystery, then your second place LMP2 drive fits into the order, and then we do have Mike Reedner, who's a bit further back in what is P10 overall, P5 in the LMP3 class for Speed 9 eSports C, and well, we unfortunately do have confirmation of that retirement for NXTGEN Dark Side Racing before they could go green flag racing, and well, in the GT3 class you have P11 overall. The sole GT3 running is coming to eMotorsport UK's Alex Meredith here, and the number 2 driver right now. Well, I think he's going to try and play the game at chasing down some LMP3s today, and well, can he potentially beat one or two of them? That'll be the challenge that will be on his mind. As he makes his way up towards turn number 11 for the second time of asking. And meanwhile, we do look here to Williams versus Vessels, and Vessels very close this time as they make the way up towards turn number 12, but staying there in the tow as they head off into the distance initially, but now halfway down the straight, he peels out to the inside. I think Williams will know what's coming here on the inside, and well, can he fight it is the question. Well, I think he'll try and go a bit deep here and cut it back. In fact, locking up that front left brake, he's not going to have an opportunity to cut it back, and Vessels through into the lead of the MP3 class for CSA Endurance, and now it's going to be Williams who's under a bit of pressure here from in return. Where's Mark Baker behind as they come down through turns 13, 14, 15 and into 16. Through the left hand they go, and coming on through with the drivers right now very, very sensitive on those brakes early on, and Williams are making a mistake in terms of that lock up, but to be fair, it's easily done, and anybody can lock up at any time here in the LMP3 class as they roll off and now make the way on around towards the end of the lap. But meanwhile, whilst the overtake's being made to take the lead back of the class, how exactly did Paul Williams take the lead of the class at the start of the race? I hear some of you may be asking. We do have a replay coming up to explain, and here it is. So the race start here, well, it was a bit of a slow start for CSA Endurance as they made the way up the hill, as you can see. And in fact, Williams on the inside, they're nailing the start and getting the move done into turn at number 1. So it's all just simply about the starting sequence, and the number 7 driver going all in and getting it done into the first corner. A nice move there on the lights. As we return to your live features, ladies and gentlemen, return it now live to exactly where they were in the replay in a way, going through turn number 2 and into 3. We can see Vessels already starting to open that gap up almost 1.7 seconds there as they come on through turn number 6. And well, right now it does look as though CSA Endurance doing what they do best, which is taking the lead and running away with it and not giving anybody an opportunity to see it again. As meanwhile, Williams right now still 8 tenths clear Speed 9 eSports speed. What is there? Mark Baker as they come down the hill through turn number 10. run to the braking zone into 11. Well, meanwhile, we do have a bit of an imposter in the midst of the LMP3s. It's an LMP2 in the form of Azz Tech Racing by Dylan Mystery, who's trying to pick his way back past the LMP3s, but having to do it the hard way here in terms of battling. He'll have the straight line speed as he makes his way on down the back straight. But the one thing I think he's a bit sensitive on is with regards to the brakes and also that direction change, and just building that confidence in being able to attack with the car as he makes his way up towards turn number 12. But again, as we said earlier, the best way to build experience is to go racing, and right now his goal, I think by the end of the day, is to take himself up to what will be P5 overall, at chasing after the LMP3s and clearing them before the end of the race is said and done, as he goes on through what is turns 15 and 16 now. Meanwhile, looking back to the very front of the field, we could see iRace eSports and also NXTGEN Racing Purple inseparable right now, only half a second between them, if that, as they make the way on through turn number 2, and we ride on board with the number 90 in P2. Now, going on through the S sequence here, the problem that Williams will have is the fact he has that dirty air that's ever present over the front of the car. Now, that dirty air really being felt once you get within a second, even more so when you're half a second or less behind. But the thing for Williams he's got to keep in mind here is, by being this close early on, he can always siphon the slipstream down the back straight onto the start finish straight in order to be able to save a little bit of fuel and gain himself a bit of a strategic advantage in the long term. And we do normally see these LMDH cars run the best part of what is 30 to 40 minutes in a given stint, depending on how much the fuel tank burns down. We do have quite a few acceleration zones here today, so that will be on the mind of our drivers, in the fact they may need a bit of extra fuel. We may see what is a third pit stop in front to mix, a splash and dash as we like to refer to it. They just need to take on a tiny bit of fuel. But right now, both of these guys eager to make progress, and well, iRace eSports there nailing turn 12. Meanwhile, NXTGEN Racing Purple going a bit too deep into the corner, and in the end loses some time. But you can see it's all back and forth. It swings and roundabouts between these two, with the gap now open up to a second through the infield section. But it only takes one slight mistake, and that gap can come immediately down, or it can open up ever more as they make their way up through turn 16 and 17 and onwards towards 19. Through the left-hander, this is where the dirty air will definitely be felt when he's a bit closer, going through 19. A nasty corner in clear air becomes even trickier in that dirty air, as Williams here taking very early apex, and I think still trying to do with the dirty air over the car in front in order not to let the car get upset as he makes his way up towards turn number 1. But that gap definitely opened up to a degree here, now up to 6.5 tenths as they head up the hill into the open in hairpin, and iRace eSports set a new fastest lap of the race in the LMDH class, and overall it's a 52.05, 2 tenths faster than what the NXTGEN Racing Purple team have just been able to achieve. But meanwhile, looking back to Mark Baker versus Paul Williams here, right now the two sister team drivers nose to tail as they wind their way through turn 17 and 18. That gap did come down to 2 tenths only a moment ago, but it seems to have reopened now, and I think it may be that Baker's just coming in a bit too hot into a corner by comparison. But either way, Speed9 eSports looking at P2, P3 currently, but we are a long way away from the checker flag of this race, ladies and gentlemen, and with a long journey to go. Therefore, all our drivers right now just keeping their heads down and carrying on here as they make their way on to another lap. Now, as they do new fastest lap in class, in the MP3 class for CSA Endurance, that's Stefan Vessels behind the wheel. We're 201.63, and we're lapping at this time on what is the best part of 2 seconds a lap faster. Now he's been released into clear air. He's running away at the front of the field and starting to build himself a tremendous gap. And what you can imagine, he'll want that gap to be as wide open as possible. And well, at Montreal, we got to see was our LMP3 winners lap the entire LMP3 field over the 2 hours. Are they trying to repeat it again today? That is an achievement of its own. As we look to Baker, still chasing after Williams, they coming down through turns 10 and 11. I think Baker here having to be mindful of the fact both of the drivers are on a similar pace, so therefore is it worth pushing hard in order to try and get this move done? Would it be wiser just to tuck in and try to do a little bit of fuel saving and also potentially protecting the tyres in order to gain some time in the pits a bit later on, or gain some time later on in the stint when it comes to tyre conservation and having a better tyre wear in order to be able to abuse those tyres on the last couple of laps before the in-lap? We'll have to see as they head in towards the braking zone for turn number 12. A bit further back, Baz Meacham, who currently not quite on the pace by comparison of the Speed9 eSports drivers. That's Dylan Mystery, who's gone round there into turn at number 12. And while the car going around, he's been able to get pointed back in the right direction quickly enough. But the Azz Tech Racing white driver having a bit of a moment there, and we take a look back at what exactly happened. making his way on down towards the braking zone, and we're going hard onto the brakes, very short indeed, albeit a bit obscured there by the camera, and the rear of the car let go, and I think coming down the gears a bit too aggressively, and then just having to hold position on the track until the LMP3 of Crest Autosport made its way on past the stricken Azz Tech Racing White 390 LMP2. But he returns to speed there in the replay, and back up to speed now, going into, oh goodness me, going very, very wide there through turn 19. He used a bit too much of the runoff area and entry there to open the corner up, and again there's not as much grip on that runoff area, and now with the marbles on the tyres, the problem for Mystery is the fact he's got to deal with that rubber and the marbles, which will cost him grip for the next few corners, or indeed the whole of the next lap, and it's a nasty thing. You have to try and shake it off, and to do so you've got to drive as per usual, or you back the pace off slightly, but you want to get those rubber and marbles off the tyres as soon as possible, as otherwise it costs you more and more lap time. But meanwhile, in the battle for P2 here between the two Speed 9 eSports drivers of Williams and Baker, we're very close together now as they come on through turn number, turn number 7 into 8, and we ride on board and look back from the rear of the Britain of Williams as he comes on through turn number 9. Now Baker getting closer and closer. Every corner turn, that last lap taking 200s out of its rival, and as they break their way into turn number 11, goes a bit deep there, and well, this could be a bit of a drag race out the corner, but in fact with the wide open nature of the hairpin, well, Williams able to get the power down a bit earlier compared to the Speed 9 eSports B car of Baker, being able to feel a bit more confident that top speed is able to carry on down, but definitely going to show there's multiple lines in order to try and take that turn 11 hairpin, and it does lead to potential battles. As they come out to turn number 12 and in towards 13, Williams right now definitely under pressure here as he heads towards the end of this lap, and I think feeling as though things are now starting to go against him in the early stage of this race. We are 12 minutes in, we've got a long way to go, but it seems as though as we're moving more and more away from the opening sprint section of the race, now to the more strategic section, it is Baker is having the stronger pace coming alive, albeit saying that having a bit of a poor run coming out of turn number 16, and Williams opening that gap up by a colossal margin, almost to a second, so perhaps Baker there making a mistake in return, perhaps a small lock up into turn number 16, and well, that gap now staying a little bit further away and giving Williams some breathing room. As they make their way out of the final corner onto what for them it's now lap number 7. Meanwhile, we look back up to your very front runners, and that is Nick Clivens in the iRace eSports machine, the number 13, versus Gaz Williams and NXTGEN Racing Purple in the number 90. And will Clivens continuing here to lead, albeit by a gap that's not really pushing beyond 8 tenths on average. It has gone up to a second every so often, but the key point being it seems though Williams wants to stay close enough just to be within the tow, but he doesn't want to get any closer than that, and I think really right now trying to just take a little bit of tow on the straights. They make their way on through turn number 18 now, and beautiful camera shot there to see the direction change of the cars and how they're really having to use all the track width they can, but simultaneously also having to be worried about setting themselves up for the next corner sequence. And as they head across the timeline where there's nothing between them, 7 tenths this time around as they go on to lap number 8 for themselves and charging up the hill. Well, these two right now are running in rhyme and rhythm as the Clemens going a bit deep. They come through turn 1. And in fact, Williams will get a bit closer this time, but not really close enough to try and pounce or put any additional pressure on. And I think instead opting to stay in the waiting at wings here and waiting to see what kind of mistake he can try to elicit from the iRace eSports car by simply being ever present and putting that ever-threatening pressure on Clemens. As they come through turn number 8 into 9. It does look as though Clemens starting to struggle a little bit on the rear tyre grip there as he came on through 9. The rear of the car just sliding about a little bit, not giving him as much confidence to return to full throttle, and having to be wary of the fact that when the car does slide around like that, you do end up in a situation where you can very quickly trigger excess oversteer where the rear of the car wants to come around aggressively when you try and get that power down, because the tyres haven't fully gripped up, and therefore they'll start to cause the car to slide on that rear end, whereas the front's all ready to go, so the car's pulling essentially in 2 directions. The front's pulling forward, meanwhile the rear's pulling sideways, and that sends the car around. But with that, Williams now very close, the closest he has been in some time, as they make their way in towards turn number 13 and coming on through the right hand here. Well, Williams has to make a choice, keeping in mind he's now in the most technical section of the circuit. Does he stay this close and risk putting more wear through his tyres in the fact he's got to try and contest that dirty air, or does he decide to back it off slightly as they make their way around the GT3 leader of Kerry Tour eMotorsport UK's when it's there, Alex Meredith, coming on down through turn number 18 to 19. Well, Williams right now still trying to stay close to the iRace eSports car, but even then, no matter how hard he tries to stay close, that gap will open up slightly going on through the last sector as they make their way onto the start-finish straight. But 15 minutes complete, still the best part of an hour 45, but we are seeing here in the battle for the lead of the LMDH class, there are two leaders right now staying very close, and Williams starting to mount a counter-offensive here as we are into the mid-portion of that opening stint for the LMDH cars, and therefore now it does come down to fuel preservation but also tyre conservation, and therefore who is going to feel more confident in the car come the end of the stint. I think Williams right now definitely trying to put the pressure on to Clemens to get him to make mistakes, get him to heat those tyres up a bit more and make sure he doesn't have that life towards the end of the stint. And you can see it as they come through with his turn at number 70 into 8, the fact that this time Williams extremely close, like clockwork here as they make their way down towards turn 11, where 3 tenths is the gap, and Williams now definitely within threat range as they head down the back straight. As Clemens locks up there, a little bit of a lock up. Last time around it was Williams who made a small lock up, but Clemens this time with a lock up on the front left brake, and as they head on down, well, the gap is going to be 3.5 tenths, and we'll get to the next gen Racing Purple car, not really opting to gain, staying further back here, and I think cognizant of the fact that right now he is getting at mistakes out of the iRace eSports car as he goes a bit deep down to brake it. But I think that will be at the dirty air, and also the fact he can afford just to roll off the brakes a bit more gradually compared to what Clemens will be doing up front and protect those brakes and the tyres as they come through turn at number 14 to 15. And well, there Williams going a bit deep to set up turn 16. Clemens meanwhile taking the more traditional line, and well, the gap does open up slightly for Clemens. They roll through the double right at 16, 17 and 18 and all the way through to 19. As they head in to the braking zone here, a little bit of traffic in front. That Speed 9 eSports sees it. Mike Reed there just in front, and well, he's going to steer clear as we do see the two LMDH leaders making their way on past, and well, Mike Reed there showing great awareness as the leaders make their way on through. But going on to the next lap here, is there any change? Well, now it's 5 tenths is the gap, so about the same as last time as they head in towards the opening hairpin, and through the left-hander they go. Well, a little bit of trivia with regards to the left-hander or the turn 1 here at what is the Circuit of the Americas, in the fact that when this circuit was originally designed and gradually built and then unveiled to the world, a lot of hype was made about the opening corner, and in particular when it came to the United States Grand Prix that would be hosted here at the Circuit of the Americas for the first time. It was a long time to see Grand Prix racing in Formula 1 come to the US of A, and of course we do remember the rather controversial 2005 Indianapolis Grand Prix. Only 6 cars were on the grid out of the 22 that could have populated the grid, but still that is a part of history. And now with regards to the fact the Circuit of the Americas staging its inaugural race in terms of Formula 1 back in 2012, so it has been holding racing in the class of Formula 1 for the best part of what is now 11 years this year. Well, a good number of drivers were excited to go racing around here, but given the amount of hype that was made about that turn at number 1, we did lead to a couple of drivers not being too impressed in the end, and perhaps the most notable one being the Australian of Mark Webber, who felt that whilst the first sector of the circuit was quite fun to drive on through the sweeping corners, and the latter sectors were very similar to other circuits on the Formula 1 calendar, the turn 1 was not as impressive with regards to the fact a lot of people made it out to be a very intimidating corner, and the same for Kamui Kobayashi, who was on the grid at that point, who also felt the same with regards to it was just another circuit, and the rise up towards turn number 1, that major elevation change, well, just being a part of the furniture and nothing more, nothing less. And as we actually see Williams are making his way in still behind Clemens. We look back to the LMP3 class as they are now falling to a lap down off our LMDH leaders, and we can see Baker versus Williams as they charge their way down through turn number 2. And well, Baker here still within 4 tenths, and he's been like this for quite a few laps now in terms of the closeness of the two of them, and getting very close there, coming on through turn number 6, up towards 7 they go. And I wonder whether right now Williams is really having some difficulty in keeping that car on the pace. It seems like it's starting to fall away as they come through 8 into 9, and Baker getting a bit too close for comfort. They're kind of through the sweepers, they're having to back the car off in order to try and get a better run through turns 8 to 9, but that does mean that with the yielding of the time, the gap now opens up to a degree into turn number 11. But whilst this is going on, we also have the LMDH starting to pick their way on through the LMP3s, and well, they've just found their way past none other than what is Baz Beach in the Crystal Sport LMP3. Here we've got a side-by-side run down the back straight, and where it's going to be Baker, who's on the inside. It's the side-by-side run of the two sister teams from Speed9 eSports as they make their way into the braking zone for turn number 12. Baker on the right, Williams on the left, and well, Baker will go and take the position initially, and well, Williams in the end does not try and cut it back, and Mark Baker moves up into P2, and well, the Briton here being rewarded for his efforts versus his fellow countrymen, and I suspect the number 53 driver at this point feeling as though the car is more in the zone compared to where Williams is at, and therefore he starts to gradually break away. As they head up towards turns at 17 and 18. Well, right now they will have the LMDH is closing very fast. They are only, well, it's 2.5 seconds behind, if that. So therefore we may see these two separated a bit further. Alternatively, we may see them brought back together even more so, depending on how the LMDHs navigate on through. But charging away in towards the final corner. Well, as they make their way on to another lap, they will be lapped come the end of the start-finish straight by the LMDH leaders. And we can see that Williams immediately pulling aside slightly off the racing line, which is that natural outside straight run up the hill, and then we'll have Clemens looking up the inside there, the Speed9 eSports speed car into turn 1. But meanwhile, this has not worked out for Williams, who finds himself, that's Gaz Williams, oh goodness me, and it's a run round there on the rear of the car for Mark Baker with oversteer coming on in and losing the rear, and well, now the number 53 driver's got it all to do again in terms of trying to pick up P2 in the LMP3 class, and that gap between himself and the sister team, the sister team car of that Speed9 eSports being piloted by Paul Williams, as Baker goes straight on there, and well, the overheating of the tyres has definitely cost him a lot of grip, and having to literally lift off and just run straight on in order to try and cool the tyres down, and feeling some of the pain on the car with regards to that mistake. And now that pain's only going to be compounded because for the remainder of this lap he won't be able to push as hard. And meanwhile, one driver who will be able to push is this man, Baz Meacham from Crest Autosport LMP3, who I think right now will be very eager to try and look for an opportunity to go on the offensive as he comes on through the left-hander of turn number 11. Now as they make their way on down towards turn number 12. Meanwhile, we can tell you that Azz Tech Racing Black have come into the pits, and they've changed out Jake Pitt for Matthew Cheverton, who's jumped in the Cadillac LMDH car, so he'll be making his way out onto circuit very shortly to do his first stint of the day. So we do have our first pit stop there, albeit I believe it is for an off track, and they might have had to change the tyres on the car. And in fact, we do have a replay coming up as to what happened to Jake Pitt, and here is the replay. Going on through turn number 19, turns in quite late there, tries to overturn the car, and the car snaps the opposite way, and the Azz Tech Racing Black driver into the gravel does get the car restarted, but I would imagine that those front tyres have definitely seen better days and now are due for retirement as where it was. Now Cheverton's taken over the car, but Pitt, they're getting it wrong and coming in a lap later. But meanwhile, as we turn it to your live pictures, ladies and gentlemen, we look back here to Clemens versus Williams, and well, right now Williams looking close, looking up the inside, but Clemens outbrakes his rival into turn number 1, and well, it's all off now in terms of the gloves are off between these two. They've cleared the traffic for the time being. The next traffic up the road is the LMP3 leader of Stefan Vessels, who's just making his way on through turn 5 into 6 currently, so they will close up on him on the back straight if my guess is correct, given the fact there's a 5-second gap right now. In fact, they may catch him in the infield section of turns 13 through to 16, which is so that is going to lead to fireworks, there's no question about it. But right now Clemens, who runs a bit wide there coming out of turn number 9, well, being put under a lot more pressure as the 13 driver as he heads onto the brakes. And in to the turn 11 hairpin here, and Williams right there in the tow. It's Gaz Williams as they power their way up the gearboxes in the slipstream within 2 tenths, and I think Williams may be looking for the move here as they'll both use as much battery as they can. But is it worth it? That'll be the question, as Williams in fact decides not to try and pounce, but instead just sits behind, and I think conscious of the fact he's got an LMP3 car coming up, he can sit in the distance, and right now wants Clemens to be the one who has to negotiate the traffic, and in return Williams will try and be the opportunist here and try and make the move, whilst Clemens is having to lose time in order to clear the LMP3 leader. And as they come through turn number 14 to 15, and through the left-hander 16 they go. Both drivers going a bit deep there. Clemens being followed up by the NXTGEN Racing Purple driver of Gaz Williams. And again, right now, I think it is Williams who's becoming a bit hypnotised in terms of following the line of Clemens as they make their way on past the LMP3 leader there of not Crest Autosport, CSA Endurance I should say, who steers entirely clear and makes sure not to impede either of the LMDH leaders. And as they come to the end of the lap, it is incredibly close, and to give you an idea of how close it is, we're right on board here with Gaz Williams as he heads up the hill, and let's just listen to that roar. We're looking for the the move here on the inside, going all in the brakes for Williams, and this could be the move that sees him retake the lead after losing it early on. But as they make the way on down the hill, it's going to be a cutback here from iRace eSports, but they can't quite find it and instead have to wait behind. So NXTGEN Racing Purple retake the lead of the LMDH class here in the 25th minute, and as they head on through the serpentine sequence of the S's here, well, right now, can iRace eSports come back, or has the tyre life gone against them, as they have seemed to struggle over the last 3 to 4 laps, and I think it's that difficulty that has definitely held them at bay. But meanwhile, whilst this has been playing out, we've also had some drama further down the field. And we'll take a look back firstly to what happened to Mark Baker at turn number 1. You may remember that spin, and we'll be right on board here with the Speed9 eSports B driver to see what happened, and let's listen. And going a bit too deep into the corner there with the downshift and the dip in the road, and it all combined together to cause the rear of the car to let go, and a brief mistake, and well, definitely one he won't want to repeat in a hurry. But as well as that, we've also had an incident for Paul Williams in the Speed9 eSports car, and this is what happened to the one's second place driving the LMP3 class, who's just retaken P3 of a Crystal Autosport. We're going on through turn number 12 and up towards 13, then into the braking zone for the slow hairpin. Goes in quite nicely, but runs a bit wide, and as he does so, tries to turn the car back into the circuit, but in the end only overturns the car and having to let the field come through before he could then bring the car back up to speed and get in the car back around eventually. And then we've just had an incident for Baz Meacham as well, and well, he was P3 in the LMP3 class after Williams' spin. Making its way through turn number 6 into, in fact that's turn 8 into 9, and coming off of turn 9 and just turning a bit too soon, a bit too aggressively, and the rear of the car just sliding on around there, and well, the Crystal Autosport LMP3 driver from Wales will know not to do that again, as he'll bring the car up to speed. And we've just had an incident for Alex Meredith in the GT3 class, the class leader, as he made his way through the S's. Now what's happened here to the number 2 Porsche 992? Oh, goodness me, he hits the sausage curve there, the raised yellow curve on the apex of turn number 5, and it sends the car up into the air. And will the Chemical eMotorsport UK driver, thankfully not going into the barrier, able to bring the car back together. I wouldn't be surprised if the engineers will be taking a look at the suspension of that car when it comes into the pits for its first pit stop, for the simple reason bouncing on the suspension like that can definitely be tantamount to damage. But as we return to your live pictures now, ladies and gentlemen, had a few incidents for our drivers up and down the field, but now things I suspect will calm down, and we're in the battle for the lead as they make the way on down the back straight. A wonderful blimp camera view here to put you in the perspective of that gap, what 1.3 seconds looks like on that straight, with the fair 100 and 200 meters or so. And as they head in towards the next braking zone, well, right now Williams definitely is trying to break away for NXTGEN Racing Purple, with the gap up to 1.3 seconds. But again, if he pushes too hard, then he may find himself in a similar situation, a compromised situation, much like Clemens did for iRace eSports only moments ago, where he can't break away and just constantly being reeled in, and that will be the change that only these two know how to negotiate. We're coming on into the second part of the arena section. Again, you can see at the wideness, that circumference of turns 17 and 18, the double ride, as they make the way on around here. And well, right now Williams are just trying to open that gap up as wide as possible in the early stages. We're not quite within room of what is the first pit stop for our LMDH leaders. Currently, we're suspecting they will go to approximately the 35th through to 40th minute before we do see the first attempt at a pit stop. But still, as they make the way up the hill towards turn number 1, right now Williams in control here, it would seem, as he heads into the braking zone. And going a little bit deep in fact then, I think picking up a bit of the dirty air off of the back of the GT3 class leader, Chemical eMotorsport UK, and Alex Meredith behind the wheel of the Porsche 992. Well, he steps aside there as Williams comes on through, but Meredith having to rejoin the racing line, and understandably so, he can't stay clear forever. And as he comes on through turn number 5, iRace eSports here will be caught up behind, and this is going to cost them. A lot of times you can see Clemens dart into the inside there, going into what was turn number 7, and right now, well, Alex Meredith will just simply think he's been doing what he's needed to do in order to stay safe and clear, and that's exactly what he should have done, to be fair. Remembering with blue flags in this series, indeed most multi-class series around the world, and the rules and the responsibilities are on the faster class of driver to make the overtake, and it's for the slower class of driver to drive in a predictable and safe manner, and that does include being on the racing line if they need to be. And well, Meredith are right now just carrying on, but meanwhile we look here to an LMP2 finding its way past by the LMP3s, and that is going up the inside there. Dylan Mystery for Azz Tech Racing White, making the move on Baz Meacham. Progressive would support LMP3, and that's overall position, but Mystery goes a little bit deep there, and Meacham cuts back up the inside as he gets the power down a bit aggressively there, does Dylan Mystery. Or the 390 driver, as half an hour this race comes to a close, still trying to make progress here and giving it everything he's got, and well, they're just giving it a little bit too much with regards to speed into the opening corner. As he comes on through the long right-hander, turn at number 5. Well, things now definitely moving into a phase where that first pit stop will be on the forefront of a good number of our drivers' minds with regards to getting the car to that pit stop and also protecting the car going into the second stint, particularly with regards to the fuel load and trying not to use up too much fuel, save some time. But as we do see, one is here, Dylan Mystery heading in towards turn at number 11 right now. We then look from him to the other LMP2 that's leading the way in the number 96, the all-blue car today of Azz Tech Racing, and that is Matthew Jolly as he comes through the left-hander and making his way on around. Well, right now, looking very calm, collected there, and well on his way, little by little, to trying to make it 5 wins out of 5 in the LMP2 class for this season, and well, not a full thus far, but there is a long way to go. As he makes his way down into the braking zone here for turn at number 12, keeping in mind that for Jolly, and whilst he may only really be one of 2 contenders in the LMP2 class, and whilst the championship is wrapped up, still not wanting to do anything by half measure, and that's the thing as Tech Racing, when they attend, they give it everything, they give it their full 100% commitment, and Jolly right now absolutely faultless as he heads up towards turn at number 17 and 18. We're on his way on through. I mean, we look from the number 96 in the lead of the LMP2 class to number 5 in what is P5 of the LMP3 class, the German of Mike Riedner, still running on around there in what is the top 5 of Speedline eSports C. And more a difficult start to the race, a couple of early mistakes cost him some time, but still not out of it yet, and still looking for that first pit stop. We do expect our LMP3s to make their first pit stops around the 40 through to 55 minute mark. Indeed, they can go quite deep into this race. It all comes down to whether they want to try and split the race evenly, alternatively whether they want to try and make it so the earlier stints are very heavy in terms of you spend as long as possible on that first stint, the same for the second stint, and then a splash and dash for the final stint. As we see the Speedline eSports C driver set a personal best out of where's a 204.41 to the nearest 100th as he comes on down in towards turn at number 2. Well, right now his next target will be Crystal Sport LMP3's Baz Meacham, who is the best part of what is there 16 seconds up the road and just trying to gradually find his way back into the fight. But meanwhile, for Baz Meacham, as those gaps continue to open up, well, his target by comparison will be to try and go hunting after what will be the car Speedline eSports that is 13 seconds up the road, and that will be none other than what is the car piloted by Paul Williams, albeit the Welshman right now a bit off the pace compared to Speedline eSports and Speedline eSports B, on average lapping a second slower than Williams, it would seem, albeit Mark Baker by comparison absolutely flying in that P2 position on 202s. But then meanwhile this man, he's finding a way to do 201s. He sets a new fastest lap of the LMP3 class for this race in CSA Endurance Stefan Vessels, a 201.142, and well, to put you in the picture, compared to the previous lap set by Speedline eSports B's Mark Baker, their main championship rivals, that lap was 1.4 seconds faster, and well, that is a huge amount of time which is in the pocket of the South African team. As Speedline eSports, we do respond with 202.140, so it seems though on average it's in fact a second which is the gap between the two teams, but that second still highly noticeable, and right now it is CSA Endurance who find themselves 26.5 seconds clear at the front of the field, and they're still charging on here, and well, by the end of this race, could we see them at least lap up to halfway through the field, if not more? That'll be their target, of course. They'll want to do this in dominant fashion, but the laps are winding down here with regards to the amount of fuel in the car, also that tyre life available, so everybody now starting to head into their fastest laps of this opening stint. But meanwhile, looking back towards the very front of the field overall, and in the LMDH class in particular, we can see here the second place driver of iRace eSports is Nick Clemens. Not quite close enough to really be able to see that NXTGEN Racing Purple at a distance on a regular basis now, albeit we'll see them on the run on the straight and also the more open sweeping sections, but with them being caught up behind what was the Chemical eMotorsport UK GT3 going into turns 3, 4 and 5, albeit not pointing the finger, but that's the way multi-class racing does go, where it seems though now iRace eSports having to change tactic instead of focus on potentially gaining time in the pit window. And as he makes his way through turns at 3, 4 and 5, just weaving his way between the apexes still on the number 13 driver here. 9 has a long way to go, and therefore there's no means of counting on how this race is going to go. And indeed, we did see, if you'll remember correctly, COTA de Jerez, the shocks and the surprises on the strategy, where it looked as though it was NXTGEN Racing Purples to win, only for them to completely destroy their own race on strategy and give iRace eSports the win, which they thought they had earlier on in the race, only for a mistake of their own to cost them. So it was all about drama in Spain. And even last time out, 2 weeks ago at the Montreal circuit, we got to see drama with iRace eSports looking to definitely be competing for the win. An instant between them and NXTGEN Pinky JD on the opening corner of the open lap caused them to be relegated to fighting for P2 come the checker flag. But as number 13 charges on the round, we do say hello there to Joe Winner 1408 in the Twitch chat, and that is Jochen Siegert there who's tuning in, and I hope you're doing well, Jochen, and we'll definitely see you again next season. And as we do see Clemens making his way on through turn at number 16 and into 17 and 18 right now, I think just focusing on putting those laps in, albeit last lap from Clemens was a 53.51 compared to Williams on a 54.14. So I wonder here whether Williams now backing things off slightly with regards to the later stages of this stint, perhaps deciding to conserve some battery a little bit. But the gap has come down to 2.9 seconds, so it is starting to be whittled away. And in fact, on that last lap, 8 attempts gained by Nick Clebbins. So iRace eSports starting to come back here as they make their way through turn number 1 and in towards 2. As they come on down, well, could we see the tables turn? There's Clebbins there almost losing the rear of the car, coming out of 1 into 2, absolutely hammering the throttle pedal there. He smells water in the blood. Well, in fact, blood in the water, I should say, getting the two words mixed up the wrong way around. He's like a shark to blood in the water. There we go. That's the saying, the right the third time I'm asking. And as he makes his way on up the hill here through turns 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and into 9, we're charging on around. Clemens, as you can see, John Meredith saying there in the YouTube chat, Nick Clemens looking solid tonight. He definitely is. And, well, if things finish as they currently are, he will be, I do believe, your LMDH champion for iRace eSports, albeit he'll want that win as he continues to try and chase after NXTGEN Racing Purple. But it does seem to be that whatever iRace eSports are able to do, NXTGEN Racing Purple are able to match them, because that gap has reopened to 3.4 seconds. It's not coming down as rapidly as we thought it would. And in fact, what's quite telling is on this lap in Sector 2, we've had a purple sector from NXTGEN Racing Purple, so they're definitely pushing hard here. Pit stop is upcoming. Here, and normally you will see purple sectors or personal best sectors right before that pit stop is due to play out. Meanwhile, we look to Stefan Vessels here for CSA Endurance, the LMP3 leader, who's showing no signs of turning the wick down, as he has on the previous lap added another 7.5 attempt lead over what is Speed9 Esports Speed's Mark Baker, their main rivals for the championship crown. Speaking of whom, here is Mark Baker for Speed9 Esports Speed as he winds his way through turn number 2 and up towards turn 3, 4 and 5 he goes. As he comes on through here, just balancing up the throttle as much as he needs to dare to dream to do so, and going on around now, and definitely looking very smart, looking consistent after that mistake at turn 1, which dropped him back down to a P3. Not making any more mistakes thus far, but still a long way to go here in the state of Texas. A little wobble there coming out of turn number 9. You can see the rear of the car letting go. Very slippery coming through that turn 9 corner. In fact, you've got a lot of steering lock, and then suddenly you've got a dip in the road that sees a rise into turn number 10, and you don't, well, coming into turn number 9 we should say, and you don't want to have too much steering lock, because otherwise it causes the rear of the car to kick ground, and that's what leads to the spins that we've seen from drivers earlier on today. As he makes his way on down the back straight, people, we do look to the Soul GT3 out in the field of Alex Meredith for Kimmy Tour eMotorsport UK. Keep in mind, of course, if things finish as they currently stand, he will be taking the championship crown in the GT3 class in the absence of SR Technic Endurance, and was championship leader going into tonight, so therefore the Briton will be consolidating that status here as he comes on through turns 18 and into 19. Well, right now that consistency definitely being shown, and also his aptitude for multiple classes of machine, racing on Tuesdays in touring car racing machines and the NXTCC, and tonight racing in a GT3. He seems to have a dab hand at everything he takes his craft to, and right now going on to the start for the straight here to complete what will be his 18th lap. On to lap number 19 he goes, and well, that last lap 2 seconds off of his previous best, a 2:07.94. But I think also within that space there may have been a mistake or two, or at least letting another driver on through. As he comes down through turn number 2, Meanwhile, we do look to the LMP2 leaders here of Matthew Jolly for Azz Tech Racing. And well, right now the number 96 charges its way up towards another lap. And as it does so here, it continues to put the laps in without question. And in fact, heading into the braking zone, had a bit of a slow previous lap. They in fact did lose 4 seconds compared to their previous best, and 56.3 feet being the reference lap. Meanwhile, that lap was a 2-minute flat .51. So I do wonder if there was a bit of an error for the number 96. We haven't got any data to suggest there was an error, but the times would definitely suggest there would be an error. But as he makes his way on through it, turns at 6 and 7 here. Right now, Jolly just carried on and not thinking about whatever's happened on that previous lap, instead picking the pieces back up as he almost goes wide. They're coming out of turn number 9, down through 10 now, and in to 11. It won't want to run wide too often. And again, we do have that huge question mark when it comes to potential track limits and drive-through penalties that could result off of it. And while we don't have the exact numbers for our drivers in terms of who's got how many instants, I can tell you that I think all the drivers will see those instant counts gradually be accrued over the race. And well, when it gets to 30 out of 40, that's when you really start to pay attention and worry about the fact you're 75% clear in terms of the number of instants you need for that drive-through penalty. And well, particularly if you've got an hour of the race to go and you're already at 75%, ideally you want to come into just one shy of picking up those track limit penalties. And well, with that in mind, if we've got 40 here today, then you want to pick up a maximum of 39, and you want to space them out over the course of the race. You don't want to have accrued over 75% of them in the opening hour, because then that second hour of the race you are going to have to drive a lot more conservatively. And that's not without considering also contact with other drivers, which will also, as it's nicknamed, a 4X, because it will give you 4 instant points if you do make significant contact, and that immediately takes away 10% of your instant point tally, which you're allowed to use before you get a drive-through penalty. Still, 7 Vessels won't be thinking too much about penalties right now. Instead, all he'll be thinking about is keeping this car on the narrow. As the CSA Endurance driver here, keep it nice and smooth. And smooth laps are fast laps, as they say, as he comes out of left-hand of turn at number 9. No issues whatsoever there. No oversteer. Just looking absolutely planted. As meanwhile, we look back to what is Dylan Mystery, the LMP2 at second place car of Azz Tech Racing White at his hands, and going a bit wrong there coming out of turn number 9. Rear of the car letting go as he tries to get the power on down, and more cars coming on around. He does have the GT3 leader coming up a bit behind gradually, but I think it will be clear by the time he gets himself back up to speed. And coming to eMotorsport UK will not have to worry too much. They may look for the move here in to turn number 11. In fact, they do, as Mystery goes on long there, lets the car up the inside, and well, that LMP2 will very quickly come back as it does unleash its V8 power plant. As they make their way on down the backstretch, I think Mystery here just backing the car off and tucking in behind Meredith, letting the car cool down after the spin and protecting the tyres. You can see gradually getting closer and closer here, and now looking up the inside, so he's going to go for it in the end. And we're on to the brakes as Meredith made us down the outside. Lock up from Mystery there, and just simply lets Meredith go back on through. So Meredith will not mind too much the back and forth between the two, but I think he'll also appreciate being given a bit of room to run his own race here. But Mystery still trying to keep the car on the tarmac and make sure to gain some race time back, as he does have the LMP2 class leader of Azz Tech Racing, piloted by Matthew Jolly, gradually closing up behind. In fact, the gap between the two of them now less than 2 seconds as they make their way on around turn 17 and 18. So with that in mind, it is the case that Jolly right now going to put a second lap on the Azz Tech Racing white machine here before we get to the end of the opening hour, and that's the pace that the number 96 is bringing to the table. As a lock up there from what is, I do believe, Dylan Mystery again, and moves aside immediately for the class leader. As we do get all of the Azz Tech Racing machines on camera at the same time for a brief moment. Well, there is the third place LMDH car, the Cadillac of Azz Tech Racing Black's Matthew Cheverton, as he makes way through turn at number 1. Overextends the apex a little bit there, but just about makes it. A bit of a tank slapper there, or a bit of an oversteer on power moment, as it's also known for Azz Tech Racing the LMP2 class. So it does look as though they're pushing hard here, both Cheverton and also Jolly in their respective machines. And that wonderful sound of the V8 of that Cadillac as it pops down the gears. And well, there's nothing quite like an American V8. There's V8 power plants around the world, but some say America does it best, and I think we can definitely agree on that one. As Cheverton makes his way on down for turn 10 into 11. He comes down in to the braking zone. Meanwhile, we do look from him to Gaz Williams. And Williams here right now, your leader overall and in the LMDH class. With what is a 6.3 second advantage, as meanwhile we are hearing there has been a pit stop for Crest Autosport LMP3. They've decided to come into the pits after, I believe, what has been a spin, and also there's been an incident for Paul Williams quite recently. It's a bit of drama, in fact, in the LMP3 class, and we take a look back at exactly what's happened. This is on lap number 21 for Baz Meacham for Crest Autosport LMP3. Coming into left-hander at turn number 19, rear of the car letting go, and we've seen that to happen to multiple drivers here today. A little bit too much apex curve, lifting the left-hand side of the car up, but the car pointing in the right direction, and again it stopped there, for then rejoining the racetrack and making its way into the pit lane, deciding those tyres have definitely seen better days now, and then it went wrong for Paul Williams only a lap later, and coming on through here what appears to be the run through turn number 8 into 9, and too much apex curve. Then you can see the apex curve raised away from the track surface slightly, and as a result just lifting the car up on its right hand side, and the left hand side tyres in the end doing all the work. The right hand side tyres having very little grip, so therefore the left hand side of the car wanting to come around very aggressively, but Williams managing to get the car pointed back in the right direction, albeit a few yard trimmings along the way. As we return to your live pictures, a bit of drama in the LMP3 class for two of our teams, as we say hello there to Michael Price, and good evening to you, Michael, in the YouTube chat. Hope you're doing well. And well, as we do look to Williams here, your race leader, making his way on around right now, definitely in his comfort zone, and a 6-second gap to iRace eSports. I think Williams right now trying to put as much distance in the day as possible to iRace eSports, but then again, we do know that iRace eSports do typically, when they fall behind, as we've seen over the course of the season, they normally do back things off a little bit and start to think more and more about strategy and how they can get themselves closer by saving fuel but managing a similar pace. And well, the lap times between what is at Williams and Clivens have been oscillating back and forth, and in fact we can give you an idea of what those lap times do look like between the two drivers, and here is the lap time history. And as you can see, by comparison, well, it has been a fast lap quite recently at 4 Clivens versus Williams, but then over the preceding 4 laps, that gap has opened up quite significantly, with Clivens losing on average about 1.1 seconds a lap versus Williams, so therefore Clivens not quite in the strongest of places right now. So the only other thought process here, or conjecture, would be the tyres on that BMW MV8 hybrid have definitely started to go off early for iRace eSports, given the amount of battling they've been doing and how hard they've been pushing. Meanwhile, for NXTGEN Racing Purple, they've found a way to save a bit more tyre life, and it is giving them the opportunity now to really extend this lead, as the gap's now up to 7 seconds as they come towards the end of what is the 25th lap under race conditions here for the LMDH class. Well, no pit stop yet, and still going on strong. Can they get to the hour mark and turn this into a one-stop race? That'll be the potential target, as Clivens still making his way on around as well, not coming into the pits yet. Meanwhile, we have had coming to the pits Azz Tech Racing from the lead of the LMP2 class, and well, here they are up on the jacks with the car, and Matthew Jolly still in the car currently. No driver swap thus far, as well they get themselves set and ready to go racing once again. But as the car being serviced currently, meanwhile we do look from them to your LMP3 leaders of Stefan Vessels of CSA Endurance. And heading in towards the left-hander at turn number 11, the South African driver here, just keeping it calm as he makes his way on out and onwards down the back straight. Well, that gap now between himself and Speedline eSports be the second place LMP3. The gap standing at 37.5 seconds, and it continues to open up by an average of 7 to 8 tenths a lap, and Vessel's in the zone right now. And well, that first pit stop still a way away as he comes down through turn number 12. Meanwhile, we do look to your GT3 class leader of Alex Meredith, the sole GT3 right now. We have a lonely race for the number 2 driver, but still, he won't mind lonely if it does mean he brings home the championship. Albeit I think he'll be a bit gutted not to have done it via fighting at SR Technic Endurance today, but coming on down through turn number 10 and into 11. Right now, the Porsche 992 driver, after an early mistake, which saw him with a bit of spin, not trying to make any more mistakes here today, but that is much easier said than done, as he heads on down the back straight. And the Porsche 992 right now, absolutely one of those cars which is very strong through the corners, but also with that strength, with the weight being over the rear axle, or the engine being over the rear axle, that also does lead to the car being relatively unstable, and with increasing tyre wear on those rear tyres, with the rear tyres having to do all the drive work with regards to power deployment, and also the weight over the rear of the car mean they take the greatest amount of wear compared to the front, which does mean that those rear tyres will start to become very slidey towards the end of the stint, and that's where the mistakes start to occur. As he makes his way up towards turn number 16, Meanwhile, we do look back to your LMDH leader here of NXTGEN Racing Purple, Gaz Williams behind the wheel, and we're 50 minutes in now, and it seems though the number 90 drive still open that gap up. The gap now up to 8.5 seconds. Another 4 attempts gained on that lap alone versus iRace eSports, and what I think here, Williams absolutely trying to break away and go for broke in this race. And knowing still that he's going to need something to happen to iRace eSports if he wants to take that championship crown away, given the points that are currently distributed between the two teams. I do believe it would be iRace eSports who take that crown, albeit we'd had to wait for confirmation after the racing has finished, but it does look as though here they're leaving nothing to chance, and NXTGEN Racing Purple and going all in to try and deliver, but charging on around and up towards turn number 12. Well, right now building up the speed. And on down the back straight he goes, and the number 90 driver here, his mission is one thing and one thing only, and that is take the class win and then see where the chips fall wherever they may. And that's the philosophy you've got the philosophy we should say you've got to have in these scenarios whereby you're trying to find that championship win when you're behind in the season finale, and you know you've got to do everything you can and then just wait and see what happens to your rival, who on paper should be the favourite. But meanwhile, we do believe we had a little bit of a connectivity moment for Azz Tech Racing Black's Matthew Cheverton, going out turn 16, albeit he's rematerialised from the ether and back onto our screens here, ladies and gentlemen. Still running P3 in the LMDH class, but a degree of connectivity issues there in running behind the CSA Endurance LMP3 leaders just in front of him. But meanwhile, as we do look to Mike Reedner making his way up through the S sequence here and all the way through towards turn number 9. Shortly rear of the car, goes a little bit wide there in terms of the angle approach, and will carry a bit too much speed for the corner of what was turn number turn number 6, and that's what led to the car coming around the Speed9 eSports C driver and to collect the car, but did so well to be fair, and brings it back together and holds us that P4 in the LMP3 class. But meanwhile, ladies and gentlemen, first pit stop in the LMDH class between our two leaders, and we're making his way on in here, and he's pulled the trigger first. The gap when he came into the pits was 9 seconds, and Clemens up on the jacks here and waiting to see what the team can do. Now, will Williams respond on the next lap? That will be the question now that will sit on the minds of iRace eSports. Will this trigger a reaction, or will NXTGEN Racing Purple just simply keep the stint going and bring it all through to the end of what will be the maximum possible fuel tank, albeit they lock up there under braking into the turn 11 hairpin, tucked in behind the toe of CSA Endurance. And I suspect Williams may be in at the end of this lap regardless, given the fact we have normally seen the maximum fuel tank of the LMDH is extended by 1 lap, if that, over the course of the racing all the way through the season. But if Williams goes on to do another lap after this one, then we'll definitely be able to get an insight into the fact they do seem to be now focused more on going long rather than short, and on top of that, not phased on needing to react to iRace eSports. As they, speaking of iRace eSports, they've just left their pit box and are making their way up the hill towards turn number 1 and pit exit. As I look out my commentator booth window, but Williams right now still carrying his way as he heads up towards turn 17 and 18. Through the double right he goes, and very shortly we'll get a sign of whether he's coming into the pits or not. As he comes on through the left-hand of turn number 19, doesn't really chop off too much of the speed there, so does go on through a bit. In fact, comes into the pits in the end, comes in quite late in the day, but making his way on in. I suspect this will be the fuel tank's gone the distance rather than a reaction, but either way, now it's going to be the time to tell whether NXTGEN Racing Purple can get the job done. It was a 50.78 second stationary stop time for iRace eSports as Nick Clemens, and we'll hear as he makes his way on down through turn number 11. Goes a bit deep there on fresh tyres, I suspect, and those cold tyres definitely not giving him too much confidence right now, and that's the problem with the car when you come out the pit lane. The fact those tyres are cold, and therefore you've got to try and generate as much heat as humanly possible, and it's not quite going to be easy in that first couple of laps to really carry on from where you left off when you went into the pit lane in terms of that potential pace, as he makes his way on through turn at number 13. A long way to go before the end of the lap, so right now Clemens will be egging the car on, the team will be egging him on, knowing that Williams has already spent 35 seconds in the pit lane and only 15 seconds to go, so Williams could right now really be looking at an even greater lead as we see Clemens making his way on around through turn 17 and 18, down towards 19 he goes, and Mill, the NXTGEN Racing Purple car still being serviced. In fact, he's completed his service now as Clemens goes a bit deep there at turn number 19, a small mistake. But meanwhile, as he heads onto the start-finish straight, leaving the pit box and up the hill in towards turn 1, it's Gaz Williams. And will that gap now, I believe, has extended even more so. And in fact, we'll get an update on that gap very shortly. And the gap has gone all the way up to a grand total of 12 seconds. And despite the fact that Williams did spend an extra half a second in the pit lane, Clemens' outlap has not been a phenomenal lap. Now, can Clemens find a way to respond on his second lap since the pit stop? In the fact that right now, NXTGEN Racing Purple will be up against the current of cold tyres and aim to warm up as soon as possible. And this has got to be Clemens' time to really strike back and bring that gap down. Because if that gap stands above 10 seconds, then it does mean that right now NXTGEN Racing Purple seem to be in control of this race, and they're only gaining more and more time by the moment. But as we do see Clemens making his way up towards turn number 11, onto the brakes he goes, and will that gap not coming down fast here as he goes a bit deep into the left-hander. And I think right now iRace eSports really pushing a bit too hard for their comfort zone, and they may be biting off a bit more than they can chew with regards to trying to close up NXTGEN Racing Purple. As they split their way between the LMP2 of Dylan Mystery and what is the GT3 of Alex Meredith. And you can see there the two of them just behind. Well, that LMP2 battling for overall position with the Chemical E Motorsport car right now. And I think Mystery trying to find his way back into what would be P9 overall, as they come through the left-hand up turn number 15 into 16 here. And well, Meredith had a little bit of wobble, and I think in the end worried about what the LMP2 behind was going to do after that wobble to the apex. Well, the Chemical E Motorsport UK driver there, well, a little bit of hesitation. That led to Mystery going a bit wide as a result, out of response and respect. But the two of them are able to safely negotiate that as they come down into turn number 19. And I think Meredith here will just simply let Mystery go into the final corner onto the start of this train. As in fact, Mystery they're tucking in behind, but getting a bit close under braking, almost locking up in fact, as Dylan Mystery they get a bit close for comfort. I wouldn't be surprised if Chemical E Motorsport UK right now maybe just feeling a little bit apprehensive about the Azz Tech Racing white LMP2 machine coming up behind, but hopefully there won't be any contact between the two of them as they head on to another lap. As they come through the opening corner, meanwhile, we do look to Mark Baker, your second place LMP3 driver for Speed9 Esports B, and right now the best part of what is almost 39 seconds down on the class leaders of CSA Endurance, but in return the best part of what is, I do believe, almost, I think it is 26 seconds ahead of sister team Speed9 Esports, who are in P3. So Mark Baker in a bit of a no man's land right now, in the fact that he's not quite close enough on the pace to catch the class leader. And in return, he has broken away from the rest of the class field, so therefore running in P2 and just trying to keep his head down here and carry on and not make any mistakes or errors as he heads on through into turn number 16. Goes a little bit deep there of the apex, but to be fair, when you have to modulate the brakes in these LMP3 cars, much like the LMDHs and the LMP2s, you've got no ABS, you can't just stamp on the brakes. It does take a lot of wear in this circuit, a stamina drainer, there's no question about it, particularly when you put the Texas sunshine in as well. And speaking of the sunshine, let's give you an update on those race conditions. And well, as we can see, track temperature now 20 degrees centigrade, and the ambient, in fact, track temperature 33 degrees centigrade. We read the numbers in the wrong order, and ambient temperature 20 degrees centigrade, so the track temperature has come up quite significantly, and therefore this will mean it is going to feel now as though that tyre degradation rate will be much higher compared to in qualifying, and also a slide or alternatively a spin on this circuit is going to essentially make a set of tyres that you've got on the car redundant, in the fact they'll lose their life very quickly, or they'll overheat to the point where you'll need to spend an entire lap or two just cooling them down and really backing it off the pace, and that's not a nice place to be. So therefore our drivers having to tiptoe even more so. We're not above the 40 degrees centigrade mark yet when it comes to track temperature. That is really the critical line where the track starts to become an ice rink, albeit it sounds like a bit of a contradiction, but it's an ice rink in the fact that you really have to dance around the circuit. You're almost sliding around the circuit in the end with regards to the way you're having to approach each and every corner. And Baker going into turn number 11 right now, and we're hoping not to slide but keep it very firm and stable as it comes out the corner. A little bit of oversteer there on the power, I think just a bit eager to get on the throttle there in first gear as he makes his way on down the back straight. But meanwhile, as we look to Matthew Cheverton coming on through turn number 1, the Cadillac in the LMDH class making its way on through and winding on down through turn number 2. And then towards the end of the opening hour, only a minute away from the halfway point of this race being reached. And well, they did pit much earlier compared to what was the leading LMDHs of Williams and Clibbins. But the point being, the gap is now 37 seconds between them and iRace eSports. And they're still looking for an opportunity to try and take P2 or even the win should circumstances favour them, but not quite on the pace of the class leaders, being on average about 5 to 7 tenths behind per lap. They're hearing the wonderful noise there of the Cadillac, albeit as it makes its way under braking into turn number 11 and down the back straight and charging up towards the second half of the lap. Absolutely wonderful noise coming from the V8 power plant of the American machine, and a lock up there into turn at number 12. That's not going to help those front brakes or the front tyres whatsoever, and well, Cheverton in the end just being caught out slightly under braking, but he'll hopefully not want to do that again. Anytime soon, because otherwise it could be another pit stop soon if like, because they had to take an earlier pit stop on lap number 11 did Azz Tech Racing Black, because it did go wrong for Jake Pitt with what was a slide and then a subsequent spin which took all the life out of the tyres. Tucked in behind here was the Chemical eMotorsport UK GT3, but going around at the outside there before going into turn at number 19, and we're clearing the traffic quite comfortably in all. As we make our way to the hour mark then, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to give you a recap of how things stand after an hour of racing here in the season finale of the NXTGEN Racing PROTO GT3 Championship Season 3. It is round of 5 today, as hosted on iRacing. It's being brought to you live from circuit side, and as we can see, Gaz Williams currently leading overall and leading the LMDH class, and that's where we start our recap in the fact that NXTGEN Racing Purple put it on pole by 4 attempts in. Williams absolutely delivering when it mattered most in qualifying, after the qualifying session was dominated by a time set by Nick Clibbins for iRace eSports, but Williams in the final 5 minutes finding a way to turn the tables, and Clibbins not able to respond. And in the early stage of the race, we had a back and forth between the two teams, with the fact that Gaz Williams fell behind initially, then we did see Clibbins take the lead before falling behind, and then it was Williams who lost out once again, but after making the overtake for the lead for the 3rd time. Since then, Williams has really run away with this race now, with the gap up to 7.5 seconds. It was a gap of 11 seconds after the pit stops and after both cars have got their tyres up to temperature, but it does seem as though right now Williams has the upper hand when it comes to single lap pace and also the consistency of pace over the entirety of a stint distance, albeit again things could turn at any moment given the fact that we do have traffic to play here, plus also it's very easy to make a mistake at the circuit of the Americas. We have seen from every one of our classes thus far over the course of the race distance. Meanwhile, in P2, a further 7 seconds behind, and right now taking on average 1.2 seconds out of Williams' lead. I think iRace eSports here trying to go all in to close that gap down before NXTGEN Racing Purple start to try and open up even further, with none other than Nick Clibbins in the number 13 machine as he winds his way through turn number 5 and into 6. And we're right now trying to battle for that championship crown. Championship leaders going into tonight by a sizable margin of 36 points, and I think feeling as though they can get the job done here, not just in terms of finishing second behind, but being eager to take the championship by also taking the win in the final race of the season. But the change really has been for the iRace eSports team is the fact they've had very strong pace in the first half of a given stint. That's what we've seen from stint number 1, but the second half the pace just completely fell away, and it's quite a concern with regards to seeing the pace fall off the way it did, and therefore we do have that big question mark hanging over them with regards to the fact, have they got the pace in what is the entirety of the race to really make this work, or are they potentially going to continue to struggle in the second half of each and every stint, as we did see them go quite deep there going into what was turn number 12, and that might be the sign that right now Clem's pushing the car a little bit too hard and it may be hurting the car as a result. as he makes his way on through it. Meanwhile, in P3 in the LMDH class, and wrapping up the LMDH class as a whole, it's Azz Tech Racing Black's Matthew Sheraton in what is the number 660 machine, and as he makes his way on down the back straight here. Well, originally the car was brought to the circuit by Jake Pitt, but he's since handed over the driving position and the keys to Matthew Sheraton, and well, they're not quite on the pace of the top two, but it is the sole Cadillac out there and looking to try and bring home a podium in this final round of the season, and we're trying to keep it calm and consistent. One big slide early on did see them have to take the first pit stop on the 11th lap, whereas the pit stops have normally been on laps 27 or 28 for the LMDH cars, but the tyres were scuppered and therefore having to make that quick driver swap and also the tyre change, and since then have kept their heads down and carried on pushing. We'll then come to the LMP2 class. And here is Matthew Jolly for Azz Tech Racing, who as he winds his way on around, going on through turn number 7 into 8-9 now. More, it's been an unstoppable force, the Azz Tech Racing 96 all season. And Matthew Jolly here looking to try and make it 5 wins out of 5 after a dominant pole position in the class. But the best part of 5 seconds out of Azz Tech Racing wide. And well, since the start of this race, they've just not looked back and have been in a world of their own. And well, that really has been their story all the way throughout the season. Whenever they've had fierce competition from the likes of Crystal Autosport, LMP2, it's Azz Tech Racing who've just been able to step it up a gear and not feel the pressure, as they look to carry on their way towards their 5th win out of 5 today. Meanwhile, in the LMP3 class, here are your class leaders of CSA Endurance, and Stefan Vessels led the way in qualifying and the first stint, but now fellow South African Matt Shorter has taken over the car for the second stint here, and I think looking to split this race into 2 equal stints of around the hour, or just over an hour for the first stint and slightly under for the second stint. But either way, the number 27 car right now in a dominant form with 2 dominant drivers and a 41-second advantage over Speedline eSports B, and a gap that's been opened up on average by a second a lap. An astonishing amount of time opened up in the space of 32 laps. And to be fair, it's not all been smooth sailing for the CSA Endurance here today, in the fact they qualified on pole and they took pole position by 2 seconds. But off the line, it was a slow start and led to them falling behind Speedline eSports. But in the end, a mistake from Paul Williams in the Speedline eSports machine on lap number 5 saw CSA Endurance retake the lead of the class. And since then, they haven't needed asking twice to run away with things. They've just absolutely stormed off into the distance. And then 42 seconds behind is Speedline eSports B, and the LMP3 machine here being piloted by the Briton Mark Baker as he makes his way on down the back straight here. And we're right now in a bit of a no man's land. He's not quite fast enough to chase down CSA Endurance, but he's fast enough to break away from the rest of the class. So looking for this P2, and his target will be just to be in position to potentially inherit the win should we see CSA Endurance come into any major technical difficulties that could see them retire. And in doing so, then we could potentially see Speedline eSports B Sunny swipe away that championship crown right at the end. But right now, CSA Endurance are definitely on course to take the crown, no questions asked. But as we see Mark Baker making his way towards the end of his current lap, going on through turn 17 and 18. The next car behind is behind by a grand total margin of what is 34 seconds, and it's being piloted by Paul Williams. It's the Speedline eSports car, the number 7, as it makes its way on down into turn number 12. And coming on through there, well, for Paul Williams, after an early slide and spin, losing the lead of the race, and then subsequently also losing what was at P2 to the sister team of Speedline eSports B, we got to see a fantastic battle between Williams and Baker for a good period of time. Side by side, they made the way on through the infield section, but in the end, it was Baker who had to fall in behind, with Williams looking the stronger of the two. But the pace was always going Baker's way, and then a small error cost Williams very dear and dropped him back to P3. But he still has an advantage of what is 47 seconds almost over the full place LMP3, being piloted by Mike Riedner, as we can see him making his way on down the back straight here with a little bit of traffic around CSA Endurance just in head, putting a lap on them as the German driver here coming through the left hand of a Speedline eSports C, and will not quite on the pace of his sister team's drivers, but still enjoying the race out there and looking to make sure that the team finish P2, P3, P4, and should we see CSA Endurance retire, then take home what would be 1, 2, 3 on the class podium. With Riedner, it has been a couple of mistakes, but also some great consistency, and I think just gradually bringing that pace forward, and well, as he makes his way on through the right hand here of turn number 17 and 18, We are covering the field in terms of their order, and we're intersecting into the LMP3 field is our LMP2 car, Azz Tech Racing White for free in the number 390, and Dylan Mystery behind the wheel. And as he makes his way on down here, the best part of a lap down on the LMP2 leaders of Azz Tech Racing is piloted by Matthew Jolly, but Dylan Mystery still enjoying the racing out there and giving it everything he can in order to try and enjoy some battling with the LMP3s, but definitely a car which has proven to be quite a challenging one. And what we did hear last time about some of the technical difficulties with regards to the brake pedal being sometimes a bit hypersensitive and therefore acting of its own accord. And what Mystery today, definitely not too comfortable with the car and circuits. We see another lock up there going into turn number 15, but still trying to get to the end. But then we must carry on our run of the LMP3s, because next up is the LMP3 in P10 overall. It's P5 in class, a bad Munich from the Crest Autosport LMP3, and the Welshman here making his way down the back straight and heading up towards turn number 12 very gradually indeed. Well, the Crest Autosport LMP3 driver has been in the fight, albeit he has had a very long pit stop. His first pit stop of the day amounted to a grand total of 3 minutes stationary time, and we're trying to understand what the story behind that was with regards to that pit stop taking an incredibly long time. And we do believe it may have been for a spin and some significant damage to the car, which has had to be repaired. Albeit I think fast repairs would have intervened there, so perhaps something had come up with regards to driving. They couldn't get the car back out of the pit lane as soon as possible. Indeed, that's something intervening, but still for the 511 driver, 9 is a lap down, and he is the best part of what is 56 seconds down on Mike Reed. Now he's got a long way to go, but the one thing he can take in his stride is the fact that he is on average 3.5 seconds a lap faster than Mike Reedner. So therefore, as time plays out, he may have enough time, presuming that there is 1 or 2 mistakes from Reedner. I think he'll need those to play into his favour. Meacham could be back in the fight, but otherwise this might be a lonely P5. It's in the LMP3 class that we have had our one of our two retirements, I should say, in the form of next-gen Darkside Races Mark Sykes, who wasn't able to make it to the grid, unfortunately, after qualifying an issue detected in the car. And then right now, our last car on the circuit is the GT3 class. It's the sole GT3 here today. Is Alex Meredith for Chemical E Motorsport UK, who right now is on his way and only 50 minutes away from taking the GT3 class championship. And we did have another GT3 registered as joined today in the form of Chemical E Motorsports Bernardo Colbe, but they didn't make it out into qualifying and they haven't made it to the grid, so therefore it seems that they've not had a car that they've been able to go racing with. But meanwhile, whilst all this has been playing out, we've been given the recap. There's been an instant match short of the CSA Endurance, and well, what exactly has happened to the number 27 car? Here's a replay. So coming on down around through turn 17 and 18 into turn 19, turns on in, and just turns a little bit too late and aggressively to try and compensate in the rear of the car, letting go there. And well, we have seen that mistake from pretty much every LMP3 car now, going on through turn at number 19. So CSA Endurance showing a mistake as well. And well, it is definitely going to be a mistake that doesn't compromise them too much, but they do lose the best part of 8 seconds of their lead. Their lead now down to what is a grand total of 35 seconds from the 43 it stood at when the mistake was made. So therefore they won't want to keep making mistakes like that, for the simple reason every time they do, they'll take significant life off the tyres, and also it just knocks the confidence of the team and the driver as he makes his way on down towards turn at number 12. He'll try and put those mistakes to bed and just simply focus now on getting the car home, but it is still a way to go here, ladies and gentlemen. And indeed, when you've still got 50 minutes on the clock, it'll feel as though it'll go quickly behind the wheel of the car, but as we do see the last minutes tick in, that's where time seems to slow, relatively speaking, and that's where the mistakes all come, when you do have the sort of thing on your mind with regards to just getting the car on home and all that pressure that comes with it. But meanwhile, looking to the front of the field, the very front overall and in the LMDH class, we can see the next-gen Racing Purple's Gaz Williams has held the gap to 7.5 seconds versus what is Nick Clemens. In fact, that gap oscillating up to 8 seconds almost now. We have to keep in mind that we are going through the more technical section of the lap, the section where we do see the gaps open and close rather rapidly. But the point being this time now, that after the early gains made by iRace eSports in bringing that gap down, it now seems as though the gap is swinging the other way. And with that in perspective, it does therefore mean, or therefore it would seem, we could say, that for what will be an next-gen Racing Purple, they are now starting to build a comfortable advantage as they make their way on through into the next couple of corners and going up the hill towards turn number 1 once again. as he charges his way up into the braking zone. Meanwhile, we do look to Nick Clibbins, and well, to put you in the frame of mind, we're just doing a bit of mental calculation here, ladies and gentlemen, because we do have what is a drop score that does apply in this championship. Your best 4 scores are counted over the 5 rounds, and well, in terms of checking, with the fact they do have a 36-point advantage currently to iRace eSports, albeit with no drop scores considered, but we will see drop scores come into effect today. Well, given that they will be taking home what will be a grand total of 45 points in this race if things stand as they currently do, where it would be the 182 points for iRace eSports versus what would be for NXTGEN Team Purple, a grand total of, well, it would be a grand total, if my maths is correct, of 188 points. So in fact, NXTGEN Team Purple, if things as they currently stand, with the drop scores considered, would become your championship leaders for today, and therefore your championship winners in the very late stages of the season. So therefore, the chase is afoot here between the drivers, and what I think for iRace eSports, they'll know they need to get themselves back into the hunt, but how can they do so? That's the change that they're going to be worried about, in the fact that right now it does look as though things are going more and more the way of iRace eSports with every, well, in fact, NXTGEN Racing Purple with every corner turned. So definitely it's going to be at jeopardy with regards to the number 13 car right now, but can they get into this fight? No, there is going to be at least one more pit stop. They're not going to be able to get to the end with regards to the fuel being utilised here, given the first pit stop was made about 51 minutes in, and will therefore, if you add another 51 minutes on, or make it another 53 minutes on, given the pit stop time, if you will, then we would see the LMDHs go what would be 104 minutes into the race, or to turn that into what is hours and minutes, they'd be making their way into it be the 1 hour and, if my maths is correct, to the 1 hour and 44 minute marks. There's still be 16 minutes remaining, and with that on the board, after you take the second pit stop, then you've got the 16 minutes. Therefore, it's going to be a very difficult window in which to try and make a second pit stop go away in terms of doing any fuel saving. So really is the 2-stop strategy here today, and iRace eSports are falling away, it would seem, as this race is going on, and NXTGEN Racing Team Purple are on course right now to definitely make this look as though they're going to be taking the crown. But meanwhile, as we do look back to none other than Matt Shorter in the LMP3 class of CSA Endurance, the number 27 driver here, whilst that one mistake, and we do see the comment there in the YouTube chat from Stefan Vessels to say the test server was never this hot in terms of the practice server that was available earlier this week, and their setup is extremely loose in these temperatures, especially in the second half of the stint. Well, I'm going to explain right now why Shorter definitely dancing on the round, and why we saw you dancing on that rear axle earlier, Stefan, going around towards the end of the stint in the car. Bring yourself, and right now Shorter just having to keep the car, trying to keep it pointed, and to do so, the way he can do that is really focusing on straightening the steering wheel under braking, and also not being as aggressive on turning towards the apex. That will help in terms of settling the rear of the car down, and also turning the brake bias more towards the front of the car. When it will do, it will settle the rear down under braking to a degree, because it will mean that the front brakes do more of the braking action or the retardation action compared to the rears, and while rear brake bias is normally what drivers do go for as much as possible for, because it does cause the rear of the car to lift up under braking, albeit the rear brakes are doing that braking effort, and when they disengage you get a greater pendulum effect on the rear of the car. But right now Shorter keeping it calm, keeping it collected, and doing everything to carry on here with just under 45 minutes left in what is this season of the NXTGEN Racing PROTO GT3 Championship, and CSA Endurance will not want to drop the ball now. As he makes his way on through and up towards turn number 5, you can see they're tucked in behind the GT3 coming to eMotorsport UK, and that is where you don't want traffic going through sweepers in an LMP3, because keeping in mind if the car's very loose by default, particularly as the tyre life comes on down, well, sometimes with the cars that have got their engines towards the rear, and the LMP3s are no exception, they are mid-engine rear-wheel drive in terms of their drivetrain, well, the rear of the car really does slide about through sweepers, and you want to keep the throttle down as much as possible to force the engine down onto what is the rear of the car, and that gives you the stability. But you can imagine if you come behind traffic and you get very close to said traffic, the dirty air immediately wipes off a good amount of downforce on the car, so that causes the whole car to lift up. And And on top of that, if you have to lift off the throttle, that causes the rear of the car to come up as well, as suddenly you're no longer getting the engine to be pushed down into the ground anymore, and the combination combined can make a car very toxic in terms of how it handles for a brief period of time, and that's what can lead to races ending before all is said and done. But Shorter makes his way through turn 13, no such issues there, as we do see the overall race leader and the LMDH leader of Gaz Williams, NXTGEN Racing Purple driver, just making his way on clear and up towards turn number 17. But as he does so, we look back to the GT3 leaders here of Alex Meredith coming to eMotorsport UK, and we're right now just carrying on from at the start of this race and not letting the circuit get the better of him as he heads on through it towards the end of another lap, coming to the end of what will be lap number 36 for the Briton in the GT3 class. As he comes down into the braking zone here, still known he's got a best part of what will be at least another 21 laps to go here, and all those laps will gradually tick up the order, and well, with that he'll feel as though we're a 2-minute lap time around it. In fact, for him that last lap a 2-minute 9.34, so a 2-minute 10 lap time if you want to approximate it to a degree. It is one of our longest laps of the season here at the Circuit of the Americas, and with that lap length, of course, that does lead to what is that feeling of almost being hypnotised by going from corner to corner. And that's another thing as a driver as well you have to be wary of in the late stage of the race, in the fact you do start to lose that focus, you start to make little mistakes. We saw a mistake there from Meredith, taking the sausage curve at turn number 4 and lifting up the front left side of the car as a result, albeit no drama coming out of it, but the number 2 driver there needing to be cautious with regards to making sure the car doesn't come down hard in its suspension. And we saw that from him earlier at turn number 5. We lifted the right hand side of the car up on the sausage curve, and it sent the car away when he collected it in time. And it's definitely something you don't want to keep doing, because again, suspension damage around here could prove absolutely costly. And well, as he makes his way on through. Meanwhile, Nick Clemens has come in for his second pit stop, and he's coming early, and the iRace eSports driver, we can understand why he's gone for this. He's decided to throw caution to the wind, bringing that second pit stop, given the fact they were going to have to make a quick splash and dash, and now it's maximum possible fuel to get them to the end of the race, and they don't have to worry about any pit stops for the remainder. Now, is this the right call for the 13? Well, they've got no reason not to gamble, and as they head on down towards turn number 11, we're right now charging on through and into the braking zone here. The iRace eSports driver, he's got some traffic ahead of him in the form of the second place LMP2 and also the second place LMP3. That's Azz Tech Racing White and Speedline Esports B's cars respectively, albeit he'll catch up to most likely in the arena section. Now, NXTGEN Racing Purple have gone on through. They've decided not to come into the pits, but you can imagine if they wanted to, they could choose to react at any time to this and just simply carve their strategy up as appropriate, whether it be essentially going for a shorter middle stint and then going for a much longer final stint, or alternatively splitting the final 2 stints in half. And they have options available, and they do have a working gap, which we believe is somewhere in the region of 8 seconds in order to be able to try and hold on to this race win, and with it take the championship crown, with that drop score being in effect. But as Clemens makes his way on through the right hander of turn number 17-18, with the number 13 driver now knowing that it's all up against him, he's got to give it everything here and leave nothing on the table, and I'm sure he won't. He'll throw everything he's got at this now, from heart and soul through to mechanical machinery, in order to try and find a way back on in. But the omens are not looking good here as he makes his way on to another lap in the tow there. The Speedline Esports B car piloted by Mark Baker. That's going to be giving him a little bit of straight line speed, a couple of mile now. That'll be valuable in terms of enabling him to close up the gap slightly more. But as he comes through turn number 1, that gap is looking staggeringly high, and will we have to wait for the pit stop from Williams, but that pit stop will be a long time away as we're to understand it. But meanwhile, as we do see the Cadillac in the LMDH class making its way down towards turn number 12, let's ride on board and listen in with the Azz Tech Racing black car as piloted by Matthew Cheverton. Goodness, being a bit of contact there with Chris, well, not with Chris Autosport, with CSA Endurance's LMP3 car, and Matt Shorter being turned on around there. And well, I think a bit of a misunderstanding with regards to the Azz Tech Racing black car in terms of the door being open, or was it not open? I think CSA Endurance would say it firmly was not open. It was quite firmly shut, in fact, but in the end being sent on around, a bit of a lock up there. And well, they will have very hot tyres with regards to that slide and spin, And can they get the tyres cooled down, or do they potentially have to look at diving into the pits? Albeit if they were to make a pit stop, it would have cost them quite a significant amount of time. In fact, it would put them outside of the lead with only a 41-second advantage over Speed9 eSports B. But they've brought themselves quite a bit of time here that they do need to make a pit stop for a quick change of tyres, perhaps 1 or 2 tyres due to damage done, or even just a fast repair. They could just about get away with it. But if it's a full pit stop, that is where, in terms of full set of tyres being changed, that's where they would lose out and then have to make the overtake on circuit. In fact, that gap now down to a confirmed 35 seconds once again. So that shows you the damage done. They had the gap up to 43 seconds and it's been wound down. It seems like every time that gap gets up to 43 seconds today, something bad with all CSA endurance right now. I'm just putting it out there. I'm not saying that we've got a commentator's curse or a timing curse on the South African team, but that's happened twice. So as soon as that gap has hit 43 seconds versus Speed9 eSports B, they've immediately been in some degree of either self-inflicted drama or drama with another car on circuit. But meanwhile, as they make their way on through, I can see Stefan Vessels there saying, Paul, stop cursing us, and I do apologise, I'll try not to. In fact, let's get the cameraman not to look at the car any longer, because otherwise I think the commentator's curse is slowly creeping on in. Well, we do look to Matthew Jolly, the LMP2 leader at Azz Tech Racing, as he comes on through turn number 7 into 8 and 9. And winding his way through the left-hander there, well, with 36 minutes left on the clock right now. 3 laps up on the other team in the LMP2 class. They have Azz Tech Racing white, and feeling as though it's all looking very comfortable here and all settled in for the long haul as they make the way around. And charging on down the back straight here, or their next car up in front will be the Chemical eMotorsport UK GT3, which they're closing at a canter here as piloted by Alex Meredith. But no such worries with regards to being able to go for a move here on the inside and just simply up the inside under braking. And Meredith sees it coming, and will Matthew Jolly in the end taking another lap over the GT3. As he exits on out there, turn at number 13 into 14 and 15, sliding on the rear there, and the rear coming loose. And keeping in mind, they've only made 1 pit stop so far, and that's on lap number 23. They are coming towards the end of their second stint. If we extrapolate it forward by another 23 laps, they're on lap number 46, which is 4 laps from now. Given the fact they're on lap number 42 and coming to the end of it rather rapidly, that's when we'd see the Azz Tech Racing car come in for its final pit stop of the day. So interesting to see the car starting to slide there in the low speed corners, and that's the tyre life going away, and also the fuel coming out of the car, which makes the car much lighter. We're sitting over the rear with the fuel tank being located behind the driver, and that means the car becomes ever more nimble as fuel is taken out. And as he makes his way up the hill, we see what is the second place LMDH of iRace eSports making its way past the LMP2 leader and also the 4th place LMP3 piloted by Mike Riedner. And right now, well, iRace eSports still trying to soldier on, but again, that gap between them and NXTGEN Racing Purple, it's not coming down. It's staying at 54 seconds, and with that in mind, right now, iRace eSports definitely up against the elements here. I think NXTGEN Racing Purple got them boxed in terms of the fact they've done everything right, and they're showing mid-portion pace in these stints and the late portion of the stint as well, where it's just coming alive constantly. And keep in mind, it's going to be another 25 minutes roughly before we do see NXTGEN Racing Purple have to pit for the quick splash and dash at the end. But right now, Gaz Williams in control of this race, and Clemens, I think, doesn't know what else he can throw at this situation, and will be hoping there's a mistake for NXTGEN Racing Purple. That's the only thing that can potentially tip the scales now, surely. As he makes his way on down the back straight, we do look to the P3 LMDH here of Azz Tech Racing Black's Matthew Sheraton as he makes his way up towards turn at number 19. And coming on through at the left-hander and towards the final corner, we're going to very shortly jump on board, ladies and gentlemen, and let you listen to a lap of the Circuit of the Americas. We're at the Cadillac. Now's the lap of the circuit of the America's Grand Prix circuit, brought to you by Matthew Sheraton, on board in the Azz Tech Racing Black Cadillac LMDH, and what a lovely roar there from the American machine as it makes its way in towards turn 1 once again. A smooth lap there, and indeed a lap of 54.29, quite close to their personal best of this race at 54.02, but 9 is still approximately 1 second off of the pace being set by the class leaders and the second place team as well, but still doing everything they can here to make sure they finish on the podium in the LMDH class and get the car home for some key points at the very end of the season. I'm coming through into what is the next portion of the lap. I mean, we do look from them back to CSA Endurance here, and well, the number 27 car here makes its way up onto lap number 44, pushing on and effectively now what is a lap ahead of half of its class, and will gradually try to chase down the P3 car of Speed9 eSports, which is approximately 50 seconds up the road. And to put that in perspective, it's all the way up towards what would be turn at number 13, and well, I don't think they're going to be able to get quite close enough to be able to lap what is the P3 car in the class, but still demonstrating that pace and potency as Matt Shorter behind the wheel here knows only how to do so. As he makes his way on down towards turn at number 11, meanwhile we look from him to Mike Riedner, the P4 LMP3 that is a lap down, the lead car of the LMP3 class that is a lap down, with Crest Autosport LMP3 gradually trying to close up, but in fact too far away it would seem, with Baz Meacham being almost what is now, I do believe, the best part of 1.5 minutes behind, unless I'm mistaken. So it has been a bit of an incident for Baz at Meacham. We did have a very long pit stop, we were advised earlier on, and therefore that has cost a lot of time and trying to find the way back into the race. But if anything, it does seem as though Riedner here getting the hammer down and therefore feeling a bit more comfortable with regards to the gap he has available, and therefore just pushing on for P4, and again staying in it to win it at 9. And if anything goes wrong for the drivers in front, he may have an opportunity to sneak his way onto the podium, and that's always a good place to be. As he comes down into turn at number 12 and through in towards 13. All right, now the German driver here with half an hour still in this race, and therefore just keeping it calm and collected. But looking for him up to Paul Williamson, the Speed9 eSports driver in at the number 7, the Briton, making his way up through the left-hand of turn number 9 and down through 10. Not quite on the pace of Baker, although I say that in the last lap he was able to take 7/10 out of Baker's time, so therefore showing some signs of life here in terms of being able to try and contest Baker's pace. But at this point in the race, with a 30-second gap between the two of them, almost 31 seconds, well, he would need to be stripping out effectively with 29 minutes remaining, 2 minutes a lap. With you, the quick mathematics, it will come out around 14 to 15 laps remaining, so he would need to take out 2 seconds a lap to have an opportunity to make the move on the final lap of this race. But Williams not quite on the pace to do so far, and Mark Baker, by comparison, the Speed9 eSports B car, just feeling very comfortable here with regards to how this race is flying, and knowing that runner-up spot is definitely his, as well. CSA Endurance are just offered the distance 40 seconds clear and opening that gap up once again, as they've just added to the gap by 2 seconds over the course of the lap just completed. As Baker makes his way into turn number 1, meanwhile Alex Meredith just behind there. The GT3, you can see the difference here between the GT3 and the LMP3 as they make the way on around through the corners, in the fact the extra aero of the LMP3 just gives it the natural ability to carry more speed through these sweeping sections, and that's where the lap time is made in the favour of the LMP3. And we've had this interesting dichotomy all season with regards to the LMP3 and the GT3. The first time in Next Gen we've had both classes out of the circuit together, and what we've seen at some instances, particularly at Watkins Glen, where the GT3s were faster on the straights around there, and the LMP3s just about a second faster on what is the lap over the course of the lap. But in turn it led to a couple of interesting scenarios where we did see LMP3s essentially having to fight to hold on to their track position versus GT3s down straights and into corners, and vice versa. So it led to some rather unique racing at Watkins Glen, which we also saw followed up to an extent at Spa-Francorchamps. But since then we have been at circuits where the pace of the LMP3 has been more notable, particularly at Circuito de Jerez, and here today where sweeping corners have been the theme at particular parts of the lap, and that is where the time has been gained. But meanwhile, speaking of gains, they're going to lose some time by coming into the pits, but still it's an on-schedule stop here. That is Azz Tech Racing and Matthew Jolly bringing the car down for their final pit stop of the season with what is just shy of a grand total of 26 minutes left. Well, by the time they leave the pit line, I suspect it'll be close to 25 minutes remaining. But the Azz Tech Racing driver here comes on in, and we're knowing now as the car goes up onto the jacks, it's the last pit stop they need to do. They don't need to do anything magical here for Azz Tech Racing. They just need to get it right and bring the car on home. But whilst this has been happening, we've had an incident for this man, Mike Reeder, who's gone on around on his 44th lap of the circuit under race conditions. And we'll take a look back at what happened. Well, this was heading on down towards turn at number 12. My gut feeling says this is going to be under braking. It's going to be over rotation. And in fact, they're a little bit of a snake in the car as he got the brakes on. I think they're going on the brakes too aggressively early and therefore having to try and come off the brakes. But by that point, the brakes had seized at the rear. And when the brakes unlocked themselves, it was the rear brakes that unlocked themselves first compared to the front. And that's what led to the wobble on the rear end of the car that sent it sideways and slightly around. And Reeder, they're doing very well to control the car and prevent it from pointing at 90 degrees in the opposite direction. But as he then brought himself back up to speed, we now return to your live pictures of the same driver as he makes his way into turn number 11 once again. And will that small mistake there not cost him too much time in reality, and still knowing that P4 is firmly in control. Now as he makes his way on down, meanwhile we do look to Alex Meredith making his way up here, and well, the GT3 Porsche 992 still going strong through turn 10 into 11 as he heads into the braking zone here for the hairpin. And will no major mistakes after a couple of moments with the sausage curves through the S's earlier on this race. Meredith here keeping it cool, calm and collected, the pressure not on, as all we need to do is bring the car home, and the pressure will be off with that championship crown going to him as he heads up towards turn number 12. We can see that Stefan Vessel's saying in the YouTube chat 43 seconds approaching with regards to the gap that CSA Endurance have over Speedline eSports B. And we said that 43 seconds are cursed, but we're not going to look at the CSA Endurance car right now as our focus is on the GT3, and also we don't want to put the commentator's curse on it, I suspect, as it tries to go to a 44-second gap. But as we do see it, Meredith weaving his way here through turns at 14, 15 and into 16 right now, all looking very collected. But meanwhile, in that big question mark at the battle at the front of the field, we can see as he makes his way now onto another lap, onto lap number 51, NXTGEN Racing Purple's Gaz Williams is opening that gap up to iRace eSports. That gap now up to 56 seconds. It came down to 54. Keep in mind that Williams has yet to take the second pit stop, which we're expected to be on the cards. Meanwhile, iRace eSports have thrown everything in, decided to have a short middle stint and then go for a longer final stint, whereas Williams will be having a very short final stint to this race by comparison. And well, NXTGEN Racing Purple are just simply running away with this. That gap is being managed, and it's being managed very well. Yes, it oscillates up and down, but the net trend is it is expanding, and as it does, that is where it's all coming together. But as he heads on down in towards turn number 11, well, to give you an idea of the gaps between the two, as we do look between them and we provide you the data in terms of that time delta, well, here is how the gap has really expanded, whereby it was at one point all the way down at 54.269 seconds, but it has come up to 55.472 seconds overlaps. It did hit 55.5 at one point, and we have seen instances where it's got up to 56, but it does oscillate based on the different sections of the circuit. But you can see the net average trend is that gap has gone up by the best part of where it's a second and a half over the course of the last 6 laps. And with that in mind, well, iRace eSports definitely right now in a bit of a conundrum when it does come to feeling as though they just cannot simply find a way back in versus the number 19. But as he makes his way on through turns 17 and 18, we look to the iRace eSports car piloted by Nick Clements, and well, right now the 13 driver here, the only thing he can hope is that there's a mistake in the pits for NXTGEN Racing Purple, which they've been privy to making a couple of those over the course of this season. Alternatively, that when NXTGEN Racing Purple come out the pits, the cold tyres and what will be a relatively light car, given it will not be going back to full fuel, may catch out Williams. But again, that's wishful thinking given that Williams' consistency that we've seen over the course of the season. I think if it's going to be an error, it will be in terms of the pit stop, because we have seen a couple of those this season with NXTGEN Racing Purple. As Clemens makes his way into the braking zone for turn number 12, all he can do is hope and pray. An interesting statistic there as we do look to the LMP2 leader of Matthew Jolly for Azz Tech Racing, has been provided to us there by Smags660. I just believe that is James Smags. Let's go in the YouTube chat as we briefly do lose Matthew Jolly. And that is saying that with regards to Azz Tech Racing LMP2 will have maximum points, win every race, with fastest lap every race, and pole every race. Indeed, they will take the perfect score from this season, and something that has never been done, as far as I'm aware, in a NXTGEN Racing series, or at least in the more recent ones hosted on iRacing, where we have had a team absolutely dominate with regards to taking every single point. And regardless of whether they've had many rivals in class or not, still to do it is a testament to their ability, as Jolly making his way on down the hill in towards turn number 2. But we have had a small moment for Gaz Williams, meanwhile, from what I'm hearing, and that has been a moment off track. And here we go, the replay here for turns 17 and 18. In fact, we're just looking at the car, and over the apex cover, turn number 18 there, and the car sliding loose. A small spin there for where's NXTGEN Racing Purple, and well, not a huge mistake, but could the wheels be starting to fall off here for the number 19? It's no longer on rails. Well, again, we don't want to dare to dream this is starting to happen, but Williams staying out there and delivering more laps even so as he comes out of turn at number 16 into 17 and 18. But that gap right now has dropped by a couple of seconds to iRace eSports. It hasn't dropped too much, but the point being that will overheat the tyres, and that could make the car prone to some more errors, as there's almost another moment there for Gaz Williams going through turn number 19. Well, now I think question marks will start to rise. Should they just pit the car come the end of the next lap and bring it on home, given the fact that once you make one mistake, well, one's enough, 2 is now starting to have dire consequences, and 3, that might be a lot. But iRace eSports, given the fact they're only making their way through turn number 12, they won't really know about this in terms of the time delta until they get to the end of the lap, but they will see that gap will have come down by a couple of seconds more, and perhaps they'll feel as though a bit of hope is now starting to return. As Williams winds his way up through the S's here and making his way onwards towards the end of the first sector. When here's mine now, it's all going to be, in fact, the end of the second sector, I should say. He'll want to just settle himself down and not put himself under any more pressure than he needs to. And that's the thing as a driver as well. In these late stages of the race, when the championship is on the line, you do start to give yourself that mental pressure where you've got to suddenly be delivering up more and more, and you've got to get the car on home. And that's the last thing you want to do, because when you do put that pressure on it, you immediately start to take yourself into a zone whereby mistakes become very, very easy to make. But as he makes his way up towards turn number 12, it does look as though here the NXTGEN Racing Purple driver, it's all now coming down to fine margins. We've got 20 minutes to go. We are in pit stop territory here for the number 90 car. We are expecting that pit stop within either this lap or the next 2 after it, and that will then see them take the pit stop that will take them to the end of the race. It'll be a short stop. They only put a little bit of fuel in the car, as meanwhile coming into the pit lane for what is a second pit stop in the LMP3 class is Speed9 Esports' Paul Williams from P3. Well, that's a little bit of a surprise, given the fact we did see some pit stops from the LMP3 drivers come at exactly the hour mark, so I think they've decided to go in for a bit of a safety pit stop here. Perhaps they feel as though the tyres are not in a comfortable place, and will they guarantee P3 regardless, given the gaps between themselves and Speed9 Esports C. But as they head down the pit lane, in fact, they've made the one for it. It's a very short stop, so in fact, it might be a quick repair stop, alternatively a splash and dash, and Will Williams with only a 3.4 second stationary stop. So I think that's fuel going in, and a very small amount of fuel there. Perhaps they have a worry the fact they didn't have quite enough fuel to do that final lap of the race, and therefore they'd be limping on home, or worse, coming stationary on the circuit with the checker flag waving right in front of them. And well, we've only got to look to the likes of Nigel Mansell over the years where that's happened, and indeed a nightmare moment as he makes his way up through it, turns with 5, 6 and into 7. Williams right now coming on through the right-hander and up towards turn 7, 8, 9, and still out there, so going one more lap as a minimum, and the gap to Clippins now down to 50 seconds, and well, that gap not down anywhere near enough to give iRace eSports the opportunity to leapfrog their way into the lead. But still, you can imagine that the number 13 will be having that confidence building here as they go on to another lap, on to what for them is now lap number 54. Laps continue to be accrued here. 51 seconds the gap is going up to, as NXTGEN Racing Purple continue to push. And well, do they need to push? That's perhaps the question we should be asking right now, given the fact they do seem to have all the collective cards in their hand. And well, it's iRace eSports who really should be the ones who are pushing, not the class leaders. But still, Clemens pushing on, as meanwhile there's been a further error from Gaz Williams, and well, more drama starting to build. That's at turn number 12, and well, the NXTGEN Racing Purple car here definitely will be coming in at the end of this stint, I would imagine, at the end of this lap. As meanwhile we take a look back at what exactly happened, and well, as he made his way on down out towards turn number 12. He's got a couple cars in front, looks them quite a way back, and in the end the brakes unlocking on the rear there, and we've seen that time and time again with regards to his LMDHs. They're very severe when they unlock those rear brakes into a heavy braking zone, and Williams, I think, just being caught out by not knowing whether to gauge, looking up the inside of the LMP3 class traffic or not, but in the end, well, being able to survive what could have been another major incident and goes another lap. And well, I think this is very risky here with regards to carrying on for so many laps, given the fact the mistakes keep on coming, and well, that gap to iRace eSports is now down to around 49 seconds. Again, it's not enough, but it's almost as if he's tempting fate here, and well, we don't want to say he is, but right now I'd be very nervous if I was down in the pit garage with the number 90 team, because I think I'd be pushing for them to bring him in. But as he makes his way on around, meanwhile we look from him to what is your LMP3 class leader here of CSA Endurance, and well, they've managed to safely get the gap in the LMP3 class up to 47 seconds now in the lead. So they've broken what is the duck of the 43-second gap that seems to be cursed for them, and now making their way up towards turn number 11 here with the LMDH leader just behind them, and well, they'll swap places in terms of transition places as they make their way down the back straight. As you can see there also the LMP2, what is Azz Tech Racing, going slowly there down the back straight and letting the leaders on for in terms of those on lead laps as they make their way up towards turn number 12. We're short with only 15 minutes plus the final lap to go at this point, so time ticking away, not long left to go in this race for him. And well, indeed, for the LMP3 class right now, it does look as though all the results decided, as it would seem in the LMP2 class as well. So it's the LMDH class where the big question mark is, with the GT3 class only having one driver on circuit, so results have been made and said and done. Shorts there was a small lock up into turn 16. He'll get away with that one as he has released the brake just in time to stop the tyre, the front left tyre, from completely locking up. But as Williams makes his way around here, a bit more LMP3 drive in front in the form of the Crest Autosport LMP3 of Azz Meacham, comes out the final corner, and yes, that's the dive into the pit, taking it very sensitively out to turn number 19, and this is the final pit stop. The gap as he comes into the pits, 48.5 seconds here as Williams makes his way on down, brakes quite late there, but gets to the timing line with regards to the pit speeding line on time, and doesn't make any mistakes there with regards to picking up a drive-through penalty, or a stop and hold we should say, which is the worst one you can get, and will make his way into his pit box. And as he comes on down, well, gets it absolutely now spot on there up on the jacks, and getting ready now to go once again. And well, where is Nick Clemens, I hear you ask? Well, here he is, making his way on around some traffic, going through turn 17 and 18. It's a long way round. It's still a long gap, to be fair, as he heads down into turn 19, and then it will be up towards 20. And well, the previous pit stop was 27.3 seconds, and well, Williams' pit stop now hits 25 seconds. He's already leaving the pit lane, and as he makes his way on out, this is going to be the final gap for today as Williams makes his way out towards turn number 1. Meanwhile, where is Clemens? Well, he's a long way back as we look to the blimp camera, and will Clemens, for comparison, there he is making his way up the rise right now, and that is a gap of 6.6 seconds between the two of them as they make them for, in fact, 6.2 seconds now as it's fully updated. And it means that iRace eSports now have got to go all in, and particularly on these next two laps where tyre temperature will be low for NXTGEN Racing Purple, they've got to give it everything here in order to try and find a way to get under the skin of Gaz Williams and find a way of getting to make a mistake where he's able to get up to speed and manage that gap. The spins and slides have cost him time, but they haven't cost him anywhere near as much as perhaps they would have liked it to, and therefore right now we do have a close-knit battle for the win, and with it the LMDH Championship crown. But as things currently stand, it will be going the way of NXTGEN Racing Purple's Gaz Williams, with the time remaining but 13 minutes still left on the clock plus a final lap to go. And iRace eSports now know how far they've got to go and where they've got to make the move in order to take the class win. As they make their way down the straight, we'll look back to Matthew Jolly for Azz Tech Racing, as he does have the company of Speed 9 Esports C car. Oh, that might read that, and also the Speed 9 Esports B car of Mark Baker coming up behind, and they'll negotiate one another very shortly as the LMP2 gets away. But we say hello there to Elwin Elvit80 Sykes, who does say in the YouTube chat, excuse my teammate spamming the stream. No such thing, always happy to have one is the CSA crew in the YouTube channel, any of the chats there, and we're all the more happy to see you all joining in and enjoying the racing today. And well, as we do see Jolly making his way out to turn number 16 into 17 18 right now. Still on course with 3 laps up on the other rival in the team of Azz Tech Racing White, and all looking in firm control as now just counting down the laps for himself. In fact, coming into the pits for what will be one last pit stop here. So we thought he would have completed his pit stop, so they decided to go for one more stop, and I wonder whether this may be just to put a fresh set of tyres on and see if they can push the car a little bit harder in order to get an even faster lap. Their previous best has been a 1 minute 56.33, but perhaps they feel as though on low fuel on a fresh set of tyres they can deliver a high 55. Well, that would be the dream as he makes his way on down the pit lane. As he comes in down on the limiter, an absolutely clockwork pit stop there for Matthew Jolly. Perhaps he'll be handing the car over to one of his teammates. We'll have to wait and see as well. But Gaz Williams here with a gap that has come down a little bit to 4.4 seconds. So a second has been slashed. They are onto what is effectively the second lap now after his pit exit, and therefore this will be the lap where the tyres will start to hit their temperature zone and they'll start to grip up come the end of the lap, and this is where the gap could sway back the other way. And as he makes his way on down towards turn number 11, well, meanwhile we do look to Nick Clivens. And Clivens here right now 5 seconds back, not quite in the zone to be able to get on the toe of what is the NXTGEN Racing Purple car, but he can see it at a distance now, and that's worth 10% in all. In the fact, gives you a bit of extra motivation when you can see in front of you on a regular basis the driver you are chasing. But of course, catching is one thing, and then overtaking is going to be a completely different story, and that is going to be the thing that will be on his mind. As we also see a second pit stop for Crystal Sport LMP3's Baz Meach, was on my commentary booth window. He's making his way on down the pit lane now. Is this for track limits potentially? We'll have to wait and see. We'll give you an update on that when we can. As Meacham just gradually makes his way on down the pit lane, I do believe it may be. But he has parked up in his pit stalls, therefore it is going to be a short pit stop. Perhaps it is for fuel, given the fact we did see a bit of an early pit stop for Meacham compared to his peers earlier on in this race, and therefore perhaps deciding that something is not quite right on the car. Alternatively, just getting the car looked over before it goes to the very end, but they will be finishing P5 at this rate in the LMP3 class. But here we look to Clemens as he makes his way up the hill. 10 minutes to go, and the gap between himself and also NXTGEN Racing Purple now up to 5.6 seconds, and well, that gap now opening up a little bit further as it looks though Williams now up to full pace and potential here. And well, could this be it, ladies and gentlemen? Could it be now? He's in control and he just needs to hold on for another 10 minutes plus that final lap. No more mistakes will be the name of the game for the number 90 driver, but can he steer clear of those mistakes? Can he now, this final stint, which will be the stint that takes him to LMDH Championship victory? We'll have to find out as he makes his way on through turn at number 11. As he makes his way on down the back straight, will mean while Baz Beach have taken a 24.5 second stop, so opting for quite a bit of fuel in the car. As meanwhile Alex Meredith has gone round then the GT3 at turn at number 16. Well, it's a spin at the hairpin, and let's take a look back at exactly how it occurred. As he made his way on down a little bit of a, well, the car looking very sensitive there. Coming through turns 14 and 15, and I think something wrong with the car potentially, as the car definitely not looking happy with the way it's trying to point through the corners. We can't see anything visible damage-wise on the car, because he got himself back up to speed once again. The car looking fine through turns 17 and 18, but a very odd moment there for Alex Meredith from the Chemical eMotorsport UK Porsche 992. Almost as if the car didn't want to cooperate, and then it just completely let go. But then the remainder of this lap looking absolutely fine. As we return to the live pictures, well, he's looking okay now as he comes down through turns 1 and 2. Then we have to keep an eye on that car. It doesn't look as though it's in the best of places right now, but I can't put my finger on what it is. Perhaps the tyres have just let go on the car with the time remaining. That may be a factor. But as he makes his way on around, meanwhile into the pit lane is Dylan Mystery for what will be another pit stop. His third and final pit stop for today by the looks of things, as he heads on down towards the pit box. And well, the Azz Tech Racing white driver in the number 390 machine. In fact, I think it may just be a drive-through penalty, because there's been no stationary stop time there, just making his way on through. And well, then the Azz Tech Racing white driver picking up a drive-through for 40 instant points being accrued and opting to take it there and then. And now won't be hopefully seeing another drive-through penalty before all is said and done. as he heads on through onto what for him is lap number 52. Meanwhile, the class leader of Azz Tech Racing's Matthew Johnny, who is the best part of 3 laps up the road on lap number 56, and getting ready to in fact lap for the 4th time what will be at the Azz Tech Racing white car, albeit it's a bit further up the road at the moment. It's about 10 seconds up the road, but the point being they may be able to get a 4th lap over the sister team before all is said and done. And well, as Johnny makes his way on through, we can see out there message from Stefan Vessels in the YouTube chat saying track temperatures up to 38 degrees. The tyres are having a hard time. Indeed, to give you an update on those weather conditions, as we do show you those on the right hand side of your screen, you can see there the track temperature currently listed on our chart as 36 degrees centigrade, but it may be a little bit behind an ambient at 21 degrees centigrade, so it's a very hot track, and the tyres are definitely now going to struggle, particularly if they're coming towards the end of a stint. They will feel as though they're practically threadbare, and therefore they're not going to offer that much grip, and it will just make the car ever more sensitive as Johnny makes his way down towards turn number 12, right now making his way safely and past the Speedline eSports B car and just carrying on as he heads in towards turn number 13. Meanwhile, we do look to Nick Clements. Had a couple of off-tracks recently. In fact, I think those off-tracks have cost him the gap, because the gap has opened up to 9.2 seconds versus Gaz Williams. I think he's been pushing so hard that right now he's found the limit of what's possible, and in the end having to settle now for just hoping that a miracle comes his way, as Williams really in what is the finest part of his pace right now and setting purple sectors out there, particularly in sector 1, and Williams in a class of his own, it would seem, in terms of managing this race at the front of the field. And here is the NXTGEN Racing Purple car as it heads on through turn number 9 and down through 10 and into 11, onto the brakes it goes, and well, as it does so here, looking now for only another, what is it, 3 or 4 laps after this one, and that will be the checkered flag there, and a championship that is going to come his way very late in the day. It's not too far away now, and he'll know it's beckoning for him, and he gets himself comfortably in at the run. And just to give you an update of things finished currently as they stand, with what is Gaz Williams holding on to what is the fastest lap in qualifying but not in the race. It would be 187 points if they finish as they currently are, versus what will be for Clemens a grand total of, as we do just give you the points total there, 182 points. So NXTGEN Racing Purple would take the championship with 5 points in the end, and well, right now Williams definitely on course in doing so. He's got the gap to manage, the gap up to 10.5 seconds, and well, everything looking absolutely nailed on here, despite a bit of traffic intervening. But then again, he's not going to mind that too much in the fact that he's just able to manage the circumstances. But heading in to the left-hander, what is their turn at number 20 to go on to another lap. Meanwhile, we're having further moments at Alex Meredith here, and well, it looks like that Porsche really struggling, and here's a replay of what just happened on lap number 53. So coming out of turn number 13, I believe, turn number 12, they're into 13, under braking, and the rear of the car coming around immediately. I think those tyres might be bare on that Porsche 992, and perhaps he's trying to take them as long as possible here to experiment today, but right now that car definitely not looking at all comfortable in terms of the fact coming into the corners, and that's why it's shaking from side to side. There's just no grip in the car anymore, so therefore every time he's under braking, the car's wobbling because it's very sensitive and it's not got any grip in order to settle it down. As he makes his way over the rise into turn number 1, 4 minutes still on the clock, so the ordeal I think he'll feel as though he's experiencing in the car is almost over, but still not a very comfortable place to be right now if you're Alex Meredith. As he makes his way up through the S sequence, meanwhile we look from him to Paul Williams. And the Speedline eSports car here, the number 7 P3 in the LMP3 class. A lap down now on the class leader. And in terms of time to Mark Baker, almost 1 minute and 20 seconds down on Baker as they make the way on around. And keeping in mind that Williams has had to make a second pit stop, not quite able to get to the end of the race on a single pit stop today, and not quite able to save the fuel in the first stint to be able to make the distance. As meanwhile, Mark Baker carrying on by comparison. And here's the 53 Speedline eSports B car running the valiant P2 right now, not able to take a torch to the pace that's being lit with regards to Matt Shorter at CSA Endurance and Stefan Vessels earlier on. And the gap now up to 52.5 seconds. And well, with that in mind, I think Baker at this point will just settle for P2 and know that P2 in the LMP3 Championship is the best he's been able to achieve this season, and it will be a target well met as he makes his way up towards turn number 11. As he charges on through. I mean, we look from him all the way back up to what is Matthew Cheverton, the Cadillac LMDH here, as he makes his way on through turn number 2 and up towards 3. And right now, the Azz Tech Racing black driver not quite being caught up to by the race leaders in terms of being put a lap down in this class. They are getting quite close, however. It should be pointed out they are 5 seconds back and closing. But I think Cheverton here will try and hold on to say he finished on the lead lap, much like Williams and Clemens. That will be his goal, and that will be an achievement in itself, given the pace they've been displaying versus the 660 driver, as he heads into the braking zone here for turn number 11. And we'll have to be concerned at the fact that gap is coming down. Well, it's coming down on an average of what is about 1.5 seconds a lap, so he should be safe for what will be the final lap of this race. We'll get one more lap after this one. We will go into a 63rd and final lap. They are currently on lap number 62, or Cheverton is in fact on lap number 61, it should be said. But again, you can see in the rear of the picture, there is Williams coming on fast as they make the way on down towards the turn 12 left-hander. Going to the braking zone here, Williams will see the Azz Tech Racing black car in front of him. I think he'll feel as though he's not going to catch it before time is up, given the fact that right now that gap just under 5 seconds, and by the end of this lap it'll probably be about 4.5, and they have to try and close down 4 seconds over the last lap. Not that he needs to, with iRace eSports' Nick Clemens backing off in entirety right now, it would seem, and the gap open up to 13.5 seconds. So therefore I think now NXTGEN Racing Purple do have this in the bag. They just need to get it home on the final lap, and as he makes his way through turns at 19 and 20, the NXTGEN Racing driver here now coming around that corner for the penultimate time. One more lap to go here for Gaz Williams. The white flag is out, a minute to go on the clock, and next time around it will be the final checker flag of the season, and the NXTGEN Racing Purple driver right now in control for what will be sealing the LMDH Class Championship in this final race of the season, and taking it back from iRace eSports after their absence from Montreal last week. And Williams right now on the charge here, going into his final lap. Meanwhile, iRace eSports have just got no response, as also a new fastest lap of this race, a 51.78 from NXTGEN Racing Purple as Clemens goes deep. And I think right now the wishbone has broken here on that championship campaign, and Williams right now putting this to bed, going for the maximum possible score. And I don't think Clemens is going to be able to respond to that at all and even take a single point away. And Williams right now going for what will be a perfect day in terms of points accrued from here at the Circuit of the Americas in order to get this done and dusted. But meanwhile, as the clock strikes 2 hours now, ladies and gentlemen, we are on that final lap, which will be dictated by our overall leader, the LMDH leader of NXTGEN Racing Purple, as all the drivers wind their way on to their final laps here. We'll see CSA Endurance's Matt Shorter right now in control as he makes his way on down towards turn number 11. And well, you can see it, Stefan Vessel's there in the YouTube chat saying, let's go at CSA, whoop whoop. And well, right now the mood in the CSA camp will be absolutely buzzing, knowing that they're going to be taking the LMP3 crown, the maiden LMP3 crown for the NXTGEN Racing Proto GT3 Championship, introduced only as of this 3rd season of the series. And as he makes his way on down the straight here, looking all nicely said and done, and all set for that checkered flag. But meanwhile, here is a man who, after missing Montreal last week, a question mark hung over his head with regards to whether he'd be able to bounce back and get the job done here today at the Circuit of the Americas. But if anything, he's proven he can get the job done, because he makes it out the final corner, he takes the checker flag, and NXTGEN Racing Purple's Gaz Williams will with it take the win. And on top of that, the LMDH crown for season 3 of the Proto GT3 Championship, brought to you by NXTGEN Racing. It will then be behind P2 for Nick Clemens, and well, it'll be the runner-up spot in the championship. He threw everything at this, but bad luck earlier in the season has cost him dear, and the iRace eSports driver will know it was a 2nd place hard earned. And then CSA Endurance will come on through to make it another win, 4 on the bounce, and for them it's the LMP3 crown. Matt Shorter takes it, with Stefan Vessels also delivering for the number 27, and then it will be coming across line behind Dylan Mystery in the run-up Azz Tech Racing White LMP2. But we still do have a bit of time to go before our next driver comes on through, ladies and gentlemen, and it will be, I do believe, none other than Paul Williams, who very shortly wind his way and weave his way on around and up towards what will be turn number 13, as he makes his way on around through the left-hander. And as he does so, the Speedline eSports driver here is going to be a 3rd place today on the podium for the LMP3 class, but a great one at that. But meanwhile, to make it perfection this season, with every single point scored, Azz Tech Racing's Matthew Jolly comes up through to take their 5th win out of 5 to add to their 5 pole positions, their 5 fastest laps. It's perfection in the LMP2 class. Congratulations to the championship winners there. And then it'll be Mark Baker who makes his way around, just behind Baz Mitra who takes P4 in the LMP3 class for the Crystal Autosport driver, followed up by the Speedline eSports Speed driver, who's your runner-up in the LMP3 class championship. But here comes Alex Meredith, ladies and gentlemen, and as he gradually makes his way across the line with tyres that are non-existent, the Kemito eMotorsport UK driver is your GT3 champion from this season of the Proto GT3 Championship. And what a drive it has been. And to be fair, whilst he's been alone today in the class, you could say earlier on the season he had to do it the hard way, but sitting against the hard fight of SR Technic Endurance at Montreal last week. But every result has been a hard fought and hard earned, and the Kemito eMotorsport driver absolutely delivering. And then our final finisher today, ladies and gentlemen, we've Mike Riedner for Speedline eSports C. The German driver comes across the line there to take P4 in the LMP3 class, and what a deserved P4 and what's been a challenging day, but also one where he's been able to keep Crystal Autosport LMP3's Baz Mitra at bay. But he comes across the line. And that completes all of your finishing positions for our drivers, ladies and gentlemen. And we'll donuts there from Matt Short of the CSA Endurance. Absolutely right now, laying it down the smoke. And the South African team will be absolutely pleased with that. And we also did have Matthew Sheraton come on through to take P3 in the LMDH class. How could we forget the Azz Tech Racing black driver as he decides to do some donuts of his own, albeit a bit too close to the LMP3 of CSA Endurance. And I think wary of making contact with him. But as they make the donuts occur, ladies and gentlemen, you can see there pulling on away. Well, what a season it has been. And whilst we may not have had the numbers here today, as I like to always say, quality always outdoes quantity, and we have seen that from our drivers. Quality racing all the way through the season, and what fantastic performances up and down. But right now you have to feel for what is Nick Clemens in the fact that he gradually makes his way to the pit lane. It's just not the way he's wanted it to end after what looked to be a championship that was almost certain to be his. But Williams today just finding that extra 10%, and Clemens just not having a response to be able to usurp him in the end. And well, what a day it has been, and a challenging season for iRace eSports. But to be fair, we know they'll be back strong in the next season. There will be a full season of the Proto GT3 Championship, let's assure you of that. And well, right now the 13th driver making his way down the pit lane. But as he does, it's time for us to take a look at those race results subject to any stewards' inquiries, and here they are. So after 2 hours of racing here in the state of Texas in the United States of America, NXTGEN Racing at Purple's Gaz Williams there taking the overall win, and with the LMDH class win by 18.9 seconds over Nick Clemens for iRace eSports. And then the LMDH and overall podium being rounded out by Azz Tech Racing Blacks, Jake Pitt and Matthew Sheraton. Behind them, P4 Azz Tech Racing taking the LMP2 class win there with James Pescasgal and Matthew Jolly. But Matthew Jolly, the sole driver behind the wheel today, finishing 3 laps down. But they were a lap ahead of CSA Endurance's Matt Shorter and Stefan Vessels, who jointly took the class win today in the LMP3 class and P5 overall. Head of Speedline eSports B's Mark Baker P6. And then it was Speedline eSports' Paul Williams round off the LMP3 podium, a lap down in P7. P8 went to Speedline eSports C's Mike Riedner, with Crystal Autosport LMP3's Baz Beecham completing at the top 5 of the LMP3 class. And then at P10 there, your GT3 class winner of Chemical eMotorsport UK's Alex Meredith, a further lap down the LMP3 class, and a deserved champion at that. We also had finished P11 Azz Tech Racing White's LMP2 machine, as piloted by Dylan Mystery. A difficult race for them today, but still building that experience behind the car. Then we had our 2 retirees who never made it to the grid, unfortunately, due to technical issues. NXTGEN Darkside Racing's Mark Sykes and Chemical eMotorsport's Bernardo Colbay, and that's how they all stood. Now going on to the individual classes. We can see in the LMDH class, first and foremost, NXTGEN Racing Purple taking that class win by 19 seconds, and NXTGEN Racing Purple becoming your champions for this season when drop scores are accounted for over iRace eSports, and taking the championship in the end by 6 points. It was extremely close, but in the end, Williams just finding a way on through. And then in P3, Azz Tech Racing Blacks, Jake Pitt and Matthew Sheraton, in the end, finishing what was effectively a lap down, albeit we can see they're enjoying the race all the same for the 660 group, and that's what it's all about. Then in the LMP2 class, only 2 teams out on the grid today. Azz Tech Racing ahead of Azz Tech Racing White, and we're taking the win there by 5 laps. James Pescasgal and Matthew Jolly, and then Dylan Mystery at P2. And then coming on to the LMP3 class, we can see CSA Endurance, Matt Shorter and Stefan Vessels taking the win together there, both doing a stint in the car today by 58 8 seconds over Mark Baker for Speed9 Esports B, and that will mean that CSA Endurance will be your champions for the LMP3 class for this season, and Speed9 Esports B will be your runners-up. Speed9 Esports' Paul Williams a lap down there in P3, but ahead of Speed9 Esports C's Mike Reedner to make it a 2-3 on the podium for Speed9 Esports, and not quite able to make it a 1-2-3 today, but they'll come back even stronger next season. P5 there for Crest Autosport LMP3's Baz Meacham in a difficult day today and not quite able to find the pace compared to his rivals. As we can see there, I do believe a couple of cars are revving the way past. They know they're on camera right now, and we love to see them enjoy themselves. And then we can see the sole machine that had to retire, Mark Sykes' NXTGEN at Dark Side Racing at 666 machine that never quite made it to the grid. And then lastly, coming to the GT3 class, only one car on the grid today. Now it's coming to eMotorsport UK's Alex Meredith taking the win in the end, and coming to eMotorsport's Bernardo Colbe not able to make it to the grid due to a technical issue with the car. Well, that concludes all of our racing for this season, ladies and gentlemen, and it has been an absolutely brilliant season from lights out to checker flag in each and every race. But we're not quite done just yet when it comes to today's broadcast, because of course we do have our post-round interviews coming up, and we'll be back for those in approximately 10 to 15 minutes time. Don't go anywhere, you won't want to miss them. We'll see you shortly. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is time for our post-round interviews. And, well, we've got 3 drivers lined up today from 3 different classes. We're going to be starting off from hearing from one of the 2 drivers in the CSA Endurance driver pairing for the LMP3 class. Now, he's Stefan Vessels. We'll be talking about his win and also the team's championship crown achieved through hard effort this season between himself and Matt Shorter. And then we're going to be hearing from our GT3 class winner from today and our GT3 champion for Chemical E Motorsport UK, Alex Meredith, before coming on to Azz Tech Racing White's LMP2 driver Dylan Mystery to hear his thoughts on battling further down the order. But without further ado, it's time for us to bring into the interview room one of our 2 drivers in the championship winning LMP3 machine today, Stefan Vessels, who joins me in the interview room. Stefan, it's been achieved, the mission that yourself and Matt have set out to do from the start of the season. You're LMP3 champions, and what a way to wrap it up at the Circuit of the Americas.
Evening, Paul. Yeah, we are super chuffed. We're happy. We did a good race today. We did what was required, and yeah, good race, good season. Matt did an excellent job as well. So yeah, very happy.
Oh, indeed. And, well, it wasn't necessarily the easiest season, nor has it been the easiest day today, albeit you guys have always looked fast in qualifying, and today was no exception, taking pole position in the end by 2 seconds, and all at your capable hands.
Yeah, the car was good. We had a very, I think we worked a little bit in the setup. The setup was a continuation of the last 3 races. We basically just kept tweaking it for the specific track. So it's not that, how can I say, not that track specific in terms of probably all your dampers and things like that. But we just worked a little bit on it. Tried to make it safe. Did a 1 or 2 stints. It felt good. So it worked well in quali. But then on the race with the temperature, when on the second half of my stint, it was quite difficult.
And speaking of that difficulty, we'll come on to the second half of the stint shortly, but it looked as though at the start of the race, you got caught a little bit unawares with Paul Williams taking the lead, albeit just for the opening 4 laps.
Yeah, so basically, I haven't done a race at the circuit yet, so I didn't know when the green would start. So generally in this championship, the LMDHs, we all go in the start zone. So the LMDHs go, and by the time the LMP3s get into the start zone, the green has gone already and we can go. Like, there's no worry about lights or anything like that. And with not really being a lot of cars tonight, even though you leave quite a gap between classes, you're still right there between the LMP2s and so on. And I was focusing on the start zone. I wasn't thinking about lights or anything. So I got to traditionally where the start zone would be in the series, and I waited for all the LMPs to get around the corner and we can all be in line. And I went, and just after I went full throttle, it only went green then, and I realized, oh, okay, I might have gone a bit early. So I let off because I didn't want to get involved with the LMP2s. But at that stage, obviously the other LMP3s were all going. So I didn't want to, I just said, I made a mistake. I'm just going to let them go. I'll fall in and I'll have a bit of a race afterwards. So that's what happened.
Oh, indeed, and led to a great little race between yourself and the Speedline eSports driver, albeit in the end able to make the move a couple of laps later, as it looks like you were putting the pressure on. And will this circuit one where even the smallest of mistakes is highly punishable?
Yeah, the track it's a weird track because it's very difficult to be consistent lap after lap. And like you say, a smallest mistake, it's not generally a spin or anything like that, but a small lockup or running slightly wide and there's half a second to a second that just disappears off your lap time. So racing with Paul, I mean, Paul, the Speed 9 guys are always clean to race with, so it was good fun. You know, you can push them a bit, you know, you can do a undercut or something like that. They'll always give you a bit of space. So that was fun. I enjoyed that. I also know I had time, so I didn't want to push it on lap 1 with cold tires, heavy car. So it was actually a bit of fun dicing with Paul. Would have actually liked to have a little bit more of that. He was quite quick at the middle of the race. He did a good lap times, but I think he had a spin a couple of laps in, which put him from second to third.
Well, indeed, he did unfortunately have a spin which dropped him down into battling for third place. And well, in the end, you seem to be able to just storm off to a distance, albeit coming onto the tyre wear and the track conditions, particularly in the second half of the stint, with rising temperature and a car that seemed to be quite loose in general. It was almost in the end you had too much rotation in the car, even when it was on the simplest of corners.
So in my stint, I was pushing the corners, but I was also saving fuel, because you need to save a little bit of fuel to do a one-stop. So I was doing the fuel saving in my stint. Matt didn't have to, because I went that extra lap longer, and which meant that to get lap time, it means you're saving fuel, but you need to make sure you go fast all the other places, right? So once my fuel dropped to about 40 liters or so, that triple, quadruple right-hander, like I couldn't go flat out through there. The car with the traction control would kick in, going through a fast corner like that, which was quite hairy. And when we got to about 15 liters left, I was like half throttle through there and counter steering, turning left on the right-hander to get through the turn. So it was getting a bit dodgy, but yeah, I changed my driving style to adapt to it, flowed a bit more, and it was still alright. I mean, wasn't fun because it's so, even if you've got these cars you can go from leading to race to disaster so quickly. So even if you have a 20-second gap or a 30-second gap, it can disappear immediately. So it's not like you can just, with GT3s, I think you're a little bit more, it's a little bit easier to be consistent, put it that way.
I see, and well, those challenges continued when Matt took over the car from yourself to go into the second stint, and track temperature peaking all the way up to 38, 39 degrees centigrade, and I think Matt could definitely feel it out there.
Yeah, Matt had, he was actually doing really well at the end of the stint. I think he was using that extra rotation to his advantage, and he was getting very, very close to the fastest lap of the race. So I think I warned him before the time the tires are going to be bad. So I put such a bad picture in his head. It didn't seem so bad to him.
Oh, indeed. And as you're watching on from the sidelines, of course, having done your stint and knowing that you just need to bring the car home for you guys to seal the LMP3 championship, any tension down the garage, or was it just business as usual and waiting to see that checkered flag?
We had two incidents. He had a spin, and then there was also an incident with LMDH. Both of them not really serious incidents. And in all honesty, I think with the amount of cars that were actually racing tonight, even if we finished last, if we just finished the race, we would have been fine. But obviously that's not how you want to finish the championship. We managed to race one of the championship. Matt had a power cut, so we basically got a disconnect on race 1. But then race 2, 3, 4, and 5, we had a clean sweep, pole position, fastest lap, and victory. So I think we quite chuffed with the results we've accomplished. So yeah.
Well, indeed, a phenomenal set of results from the pair of you all the way through the season. And I have to ask, has there been a particular race which has stood out for yourselves as the highlight of the season?
From a driving experience, or from a personal driving experience where I learned a lot about the car, was when I did the 2-hour 40-minute solo at Jerez. But at the same time, that's probably the worst race because all my competitors basically bowed out. So I was doing a solo in the car, but also a solo on track effectively for 2 hours 40. So in terms of, I actually learned a lot about the car there, and that actually helped me being faster at the 2 following tracks. So it's like a bit of a mixed bag. But I would say in terms of driving, that was a cool race for me. But it was also in terms of competition not great. I really wish Michael did their full season. That would have been cool.
Oh, indeed. We have definitely missed seeing Michael Paul from Ignition Motorsport on the grid tonight, and it would have been interesting to see yourselves and the Ignition Motorsport driver go toe-to-toe for the final round this season. But still, what we've got to see another fantastic and dominant drive from yourself and Matt throughout tonight. And I guess the question is, what's next for yourselves with regards to upcoming seasons? We will have a Season 4 of the Proto GT3 Championship that's still being worked on, but is there anything else in the pipeline for CSA Endurance?
Yeah, the GT3 Fixed League. We are currently leading gold and bronze, so we need to consolidate that for the last 3 races. And the last race didn't go to plan, not at all. 2-hour race at Nordschleife and getting tapped in an accident with your teammate, not even clearing the GP loop. So that was horrible. But so we've got some comeback to do. We've got some points to make up. In the Porsche at Le Mans, it's not going to be great. So yes, we've got some work to do. That's the next chapter. Eh?
Well, we definitely look forward to seeing that next chapter from yourself and the team. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, you can catch the continuation of the Fixed GT3 League hosted by NXTGEN, which will be next Wednesday. More on that a little bit later. But Stefan, just before we do let you go, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast tonight?
Okay, I'll start with my teammate. Awesome support. I mean, his driving has been brilliant, been faultless. Okay, I had 2 spins tonight, but it's okay. It is COTA, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, his driving has been really great. And then thanks to all the guys that pitched up for racing, because if there was more races like a race, it would have not been great. And then obviously thanks to all the admin guys and you, Paul, for doing awesome commentary and making some drama. You should go and drive to survive, man.
I'll see if they've got any vacancies available, although I doubt it, to be fair. But still, Stefan, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you join me in the interview room. And well, may I say congratulations to yourself and Matt once again, not just for a dominant display today, indeed for the majority of the season, but also on becoming our inaugural LMP3 champions in the Proto GT3 Championship. A well-deserved title, I think everybody will agree. And we'll definitely now we look forward to seeing how CSA carry on the story in the Fixed GT3 League next week. But until then, savour of the moment, enjoy it, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Paul. Have a lucky evening.
You too. So hearing that there from Stefan Wessels, one of the 2 drivers behind CSA Endurance, and what a day it has been for themselves. Missing Ignition Motorsport's Michael Paul, they would have loved to have seen the blue and black machine racing against them for the final time this season, and we could have had quite the battle between them, but still at the same time taking the hand they were dealt and still delivering as per usual with a 2-second gap in pole position in qualifying, losing out at the start of the race, albeit not being quite used to the starting procedure at the circuit in the Americas, but it led to a great little battle in the opening 10 minutes between Wessels and Paul Williams from Speed 9 eSports, and that battle in the end coming to a bit of a halt when we did see a brief mistake from the Speed 9 eSports driver, and at that point onwards CSA Endurance was allowed to run away with proceedings like we have seen them do so time and time again this season, and will come the end of it all. Not quite a perfect season in terms of the disconnect in what was the Watkins Glen race of the season opener due to a technical issue, but still when they've been on track they've really been infallible, and today has proven that point. And we've still got plenty more to look forward to with the South African outfit, as they say, as we heard Stefan saying, battling for both the gold and bronze championship titles in the Fixed GT3 League hosted by NXTGEN. And well, will they be able to do that to add to their trophy cabinet from the performances today? We'll have to wait and see, and all that will be next week. But now coming on to our second interview of the day, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be very shortly hearing from Alex Meredith, and the GT3 driver, your GT3 champion for the season as well. And as he gets ready to join me in the interview room, we're going to be hearing his story and thoughts on what definitely has been a hard-worked championship campaign from start to finish. And as he joins me now in the interview room, Alex, It's taken 5 rounds. It's taken probably every little bit of yourself imaginable, but you've done it. You have taken the GT3 Championship crown for this season of the Proto GT3 Championship. May not have been quite the way you expected it to happen tonight in the absence of SR Technic Endurance, but still, it's a crown all the same, and what a way to do it.
Yeah, obviously, extremely happy with the result. Obviously, this was my first win this season, so obviously, quite surprised to be bringing home the championship, if I'm quite honest, because they normally had the pace on me. But I guess consistency paid off. I think they retired in the first race, and I got a P3, so that's already quite a jump of points there. So I think just trying to finish every race, and it just proves that consistency might be a little bit more important than overall pace at some points.
Oh, most definitely. And well, today really been a class of 1 for yourself. Qualifying in, not having too much pressure on it, but it looked as though you're on the ball straight away in qualifying. I have to ask, how did you find the Circuit of the Americas track? Because some enjoy it, some dislike it. It seems to be a bit of a Marmite circuit.
Yeah, normally I don't enjoy it too much, but especially in quali trim on that particular setup that I was using, it felt really good, particularly through sector, I'd say 3, just through the final 2 corners. I could really gain a lot of time. I did a lot of practice this morning, and just my lap time's just getting better and better, and I could not find that 2:05 for the whole time. And then I eventually found it, and obviously extremely pleased with that.
Well, finding the target time in the end and then going into the race. We saw in the early stages you having a little bit of back and forth with some of the LMP3 cars out there, but it looked as though for all the speed you could have on the straights versus the LMP3s, in the corners they were just able to charge off into a distance, particularly that opening pair of sectors.
Yeah, it was unfortunate because between the 2 hairpins, I was quite competitive with them, and I had a few little switchback maneuvers when people were lapping me just for a bit of fun. But yeah, as soon as I got off that bit and down into sector 3 and sector 1, then they were just completely gone. I tried to catch them up, but then I was abusing my tyres, so I didn't really want to push too much.
And speaking of pushing too much, particularly as we saw the racing temperatures go higher and higher on track as the 2 hours progressed, we saw tyre degradation become a major factor, and will the Porsche 992, a car not known for being nice on its tyres, particularly when they start to get very warm?
Yeah, to be honest, by the end, I'd decided to stay out on the same tyres just for a bit of a challenge, and by the end I was just because I was on my own, I was just having a bit of fun trying to drift the car a little bit. Sometimes that didn't work, and I assume you took a couple of shots of me having a few spins, but I was just trying to have a bit of fun at the end, trying to master a drift. But the traction control, along with a little bit too much power, denied me that.
Indeed, we were wondering what was going on. We thought you might have had a problem with the car, but if you were just trying to see how far it could go sideways before the traction control kicked in, well, you had us fooled there. I can definitely say that. But still, enjoy yourself on the way to the finish. And when you look back on this season and taking your first win of the season in the finale, of course, that's a great result in itself. But are there any other races or moments that really stand out to you?
Most definitely last race at Canada. I mean, I found some pace there that I just never would believe I found. It was like sort of like when Ayrton Senna used to say, like at Monaco, that he just was sort of in a tunnel and he wasn't really thinking. It was sort of like that, and it was just completely in a zone, and that's such a satisfactory moment as a driver when you can just turn the car in and it goes, and then you get into a nice rhythm and you keep improving and improving. Even if the tyres 90 laps old, you're just going to keep improving. It's such a nice feeling.
Oh, indeed. I think we can appreciate that and the enjoyment you took from it, and particularly that drive at Montreal, which will stand out the test of time in many a mind, both driver and spectator alike. It was phenomenal to see you giving it everything there, and really you've given it everything this season. You've taken your first Next Gen Championship crown with the GT3s in this championship. So what's next for yourself? What's the next big goal? Is it with regards to NXTCC, or is there more in the pipeline?
Well, definitely NXTCC is the next milestone, if you like. So I'm just gonna see how that goes, take it race by race. Obviously, I've got some extremely fierce competition in the Pro-Am class there, and then maybe having a crack at the normal GT3 fixed series as well, maybe, as well as the Proto. Should be quite interesting to see the difference and whether I can face up against seasoned GT3 drivers.
Well, I think we'd all definitely love to see you go into the fixed GT3 league at some point, but still we wish you all the best in your concentrated efforts on the NXTCC as that championship continues to wind its way up to its peak. But just before we do let you go, Alex, is there anybody you'd like to give it a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast tonight?
Yeah, once again, anybody who's watching me, obviously always supported by my parents as well, so massive thanks to them. Thanks to NextGen for hosting this league. It's been really enjoyable. Learned a lot from it as well, just in terms of driving a GT3 car quickly. And obviously you, Paul, for doing fantastic commentary, and finally Kemi Tooley Motorsports for, jumping me up to this step to manage to win a championship, which just feels incredible.
Well, Alex, with that, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you join me in the interview room. I can see both Mum and Dad there in the YouTube chat, both Catherine and John, congratulating you on the championship, and what a deserved championship at that. You had to battle hard versus fierce competition for SR Technic Endurance, but you stand as the GT3 champion for what is Season 3 of the Next Gen Proto GT3 Championship hosted on iRacing. Savor the moment, enjoy it, and we look forward to plenty more from yourself in the NXTCC when we do return to that in a couple of weeks' time. But until then, rest well, and well, congratulations once again.
Thank you, Paul.
So hearing there from our second interview of today, Alex Meredith in the number 2 Porsche 992 and the Chemical eMotorsport UK driver. I think it's just settling in on what he's been able to deliver today. And well, perhaps not the way we wanted to see it conclude in terms of being the sole GT3 on the grid, but still had to turn up and deliver. And that really has been the whole mantra of his season in terms of turning up and delivering lap after lap and the consistency that's come with it, and also bouncing back from the adversity. And when asked about what's been his most memorable moment, or one of his key memorable moments of the championship, that drive in Montreal 2 weeks ago where it all went wrong before we went racing. He put the wrong fuel in the car and therefore had to come into the pits come the end of the opening lap in order to put the right fuel in, and therefore had to bounce back with an extra pit stop. And he fought back to P2, and it's results like that, plus also in the opening and holding on to P3, which in the end mean the difference between being champion and runner-up. And well, for the Chemical eMotorsport UK driver, definitely the right attitude to have going forward into any other campaign he makes, and he's definitely becoming a role model for other aspiring drivers, I can tell you that. And well, with a win today, his first and only win of the season, it just goes to show you don't need to necessarily win every race in a championship. You need to get the right points and take the wins at the right time, and it will all come together. But now coming on to our final interview of the day, we are now going to very shortly hear from our LMP2 driver of Azz Tech Racing White's Dylan Mystery as he gets ready to join me in the interview room and hear his perspective on what has been definitely another testing day of racing in the LMP2 machine and get into grips with its strengths and weaknesses. But as he gets ready to join me in the interview room, we'll also get to hear his perspective on the mood at Azz Tech Racing as he joins me now. And good evening to you, Dylan. And well, a second place today in the Azz Tech Racing White LMP2 machine, and it looked as though you're having a lot of fun out there at the Circuit of the Americas track, albeit a very tricky one as well to get used to. I don't think any audio is currently coming through from Dylan's microphone. We'll see if we can rectify that, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, I've got it working now.
There we go. No worries. Glad to hear you, Dylan. And well, as I say, what a testing day for yourself. And the Circuit of the Americas, a tricky track.
Yeah, it was a very tricky track. It's a Hermann Tilke track, so obviously it's going to be very, very awkward to drive. It's a mixed match of different European circuits that Hermann Tilke designed. But yeah, it was just trying to get used to the LMP2 around the circuit because it doesn't really have a flow. It's like it's a stop and start track, and it's really hard to keep consistency. But you know what? We got through it today, and you know there was no issues, and we kept on the track.
Well, that's absolutely great to hear. And already hearing the positivity from yourself, and I think many will be pleased with that. And well, coming into qualifying firstly, we did see for the most part of the qualifying session, you starting to sit around the mid portion of the LMP3 qualifying times and improving as the session went on. Where were you finding the time was coming as time went on?
Yeah, I was mostly matching my teammate Matt Jolly through Sector 1 and Sector 2. But it was the final sector where I kept on losing the time. I just couldn't get the car to flow through the final few corners. I just could not get the lap time. But yeah, Sector 1 and Sector 2 is where I had most lap time.
And two very tricky sectors, and like you said a moment ago, this being a Hermann Tilke design circuit and it being quite a mix-up of a number of other circuits around the globe. With that in mind, and then going into some very hot conditions in terms of racing around here in the state of Texas, we saw a number of lockups in yourself and also moments where the tyres just seemed to give way. What's it like in an LMP2 in terms of, is it being on a bit of a knife edge in terms of where the grip is versus when you're going to lose control of the car?
Yeah, I was on the knife edge for pretty much the whole race. I had to pit twice because I had the meatball flag twice in the race because what had happened was the tyres had gone and I hadn't noticed. But yeah, towards the end of the race, I was deciding whether or not to box just for another set of tyres so the suspension doesn't fail in any way. But in the end, I chose to box for another set of tyres. But yeah, the tyre degradation was very, very high today, especially with the hot track and obviously the way the circuit is.
Indeed, and with that and the additional pit stops and being done for safety there, and a wise choice it must be said, we got to see gradually building the pace as the racing went on, albeit not quite able to necessarily match the pace of your sister team in the form of Matthew Jolly at Azz Tech Racing, but it looked as though at certain points you were starting to find that rhythm in the race.
Yeah, I knew going into the race it was going to be the same with Montreal. You know, I wasn't going to have the pace of the sister car. But you know, I knew I was going to be around about the same times as the LMP3s and the GT3s. But it was as long as keeping it. I think my aim today was just keeping it out on track. But as the race got on, I found consistency. I found the flow. You know, towards the end, I knew the lap times were going because of the tyres. But I found the flow. Like one thing I struggled with was track limits. But you know, I didn't hit the wall. I didn't have to come in, do a long pit stop. So I found the flow, I found the rhythm, and in the end, I got to check a flag.
Well, indeed, and that's what it's all about. It's not just about being a winner, just getting to the checker flag is a victory in of itself, particularly after 2 hours of racing. And I have to ask, with your experience in the latter half of this season of the Proto GT3 Championship, what else is next for yourself in terms of, can we expect to see you on the grid in the future Next Gen series, or have you got other series planned?
Well, for me, it's actually a return to broadcasting. You know, I've enjoyed my spell of racing. I'm normally a broadcaster, but I've taken a step back and gone back into racing. But yeah, I think I'll be doing my first full-time broadcasting in a few weeks with the Azz Tech boys, and I'll be going back into some Mazda racing with Actual Vision.
Oh, that's absolutely brilliant to hear, and we do hope both the broadcasting and also the Mazda racing does go well. And I have to ask, how's the mood in the wider Azz Tech Racing camp, given the fact they've made it a perfect score this season in the sister car, not a single point dropped over the course of the season? It must be quite a happy situation at the moment.
Yeah, well, Matt Jolly didn't really speak, but I know James is really happy. He's on holiday at the minute, but you know, they've done an amazing job, both of them. You know, winning every single race from start to finish. They've done an amazing job. I know they're extremely happy. You know, they secured the championship with quite a few rounds to go. So, you know, they're over the moon. They're happy. They've got this consistency. They've got this record. They were unbeaten. You know, this is what Azz Tech are.
Oh, indeed, and I think it will be a record that stands the test of time, because it will be the first time we've ever seen a team achieve a perfect score sheet over the entirety of a season, even with drop scores being present. But just before we do let you go, Dylan, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast tonight?
Yeah, I want to thank obviously the whole of the Azz Tech Racing team, so the drivers that competed, so whether they be Gabriel, James, Matt Jolly, Matt Cheverton and Jake, they've all done an amazing job across the season. I want to thank my parents, because I know right now they're going to tell me to shut up because it is quite late. But yeah.
Well, Dylan, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you join me in the interview room. Congratulations once again on making it to the checkered flag today and taking second place in the LMP2 class. And we wish you all the best in your future endeavours. But know you'd always be welcome back on the grid in the official NXTGEN Racing Series. And we'd love to see more of you. But until then, have a fantastic rest of your evening.
Thank you, Paul.
So hearing it there from our final interview of today, the LMP2 driver who always is in a good mood. It's great to hear him enjoying himself out there, Dylan Mystery, the Azz Tech Racing white driver whose goal today was to make it to the checkered flag and mix it up with the GT3s and the LMP3s, and we got to see exactly that. I'm proud of the fact he never ended up in a situation where he put the car in the wall and so it have to go to the pits either by tow or alternatively by being driven to the pits in response to a meatball flag or the black and orange flag. Having a couple of moments we did need to change the tyres more times than perhaps expected in order to make sure it was safe on the suspension, but to be fair, safety first, and that's what it's all about when you're building up that experience behind the wheel of the car. And well, the LMP2 driver there bringing it on home, and what a proud day for Azz Tech Racing, not just within the white team but also as a whole, with them the sister team of Azz Tech Racing themselves achieving a perfect score in a NXTGEN Racing Series, and it has never happened before where they took every win, every pole position and every fastest lap and all the points available to them over the course of the 5 rounds of this championship. And well, definitely it's going to be a hard marker to beat. And well, definitely today, I think Dylan Mystery continuing to rise and get himself to grips with the car. And well, with that, you never know, when we see him on circuit next time, perhaps he'll be pushing even higher in the stakes and looking to emulate his sister teammates today. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our interviews. And we've just heard from the 3 drivers of as follows: CSA Endurance's Stefan Vessels, one of the 2 drivers of Vessels and Matt Shorter, the winning pair in the LMP3 Championship. We then heard from Chemical eMotorsport UK's Alex Meredith, your GT3 class champion. And we just heard from runner-up in the LMP2 class today and runner-up in the LMP2 Championship of Azz Tech Racing White, Dylan Mystery there. Congratulations to them all, and thank you to them all for joining me in the interview room once again. But now it is time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show and you want to know more about the NXTGEN Racing community, perhaps you're sat there right now thinking that you want to be on the grid for a future season of the NXTGEN Racing Proto GT3 Championship, or you'd like to know more about our ongoing series such as the NXTCC, our Touring Car Championship Season 4, alternatively our fixed GT3 League, which is also ongoing, and we've still got 3 rounds to go, which we'll be running on a weekly basis as of next week to the season finale. We can find out all about those and plenty more at NXTGEN Racing by firstly going to our official website, and that may be found at nextgenracing.co.uk. And as our website appears on screen currently, it's the home of clean and fair sim racing for all, and we've been hosting leagues for the best part of almost 17 years now, going from strength to strength, but we've now moved from console and PC to purely PC, focusing on the iRacing platform. And we'd love to have you join us on the grid, or if you don't want to be on the grid necessarily, and perhaps you just want to be part of a wholesome sim racing community where everyone's there to try and help one another get better and enjoy sim racing, which is what it's all about, because it is for all at the day, whether it be rookies through to esports professionals, then do feel free to take a look at our website and even join the official NXTGEN Racing Discord. But if you don't want to go to our website necessarily and you're more of a social media person, then don't be afraid to join our Facebook group, and link available on screen there at facebook.com/groups/NXTGEN Racing. Well, there you can find out all similar details to what are on our website, but also you can get to talk to the staff and admin members and find out about what we do on the real circuit as well as the virtual circuit. We're a good number of our participating staff and admin members being track marshals around the United Kingdom, and some of them as well being racing drivers. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, well, that wraps up our third season of the Next Gen Racing Proto GT3 Championship. But we've still got plenty more planned for 2023. And as we said only moments ago, next Wednesday, it will be the continuation of the fixed GT3 League with round 6 of 8. We've also got a season 4 of the Proto GT3 Championship planned for later on this year. And stay tuned for that. It will be coming back in due course. And we have also got the ongoing Next Gen Racing Touring Car Championship Season 4. We've also got other series potentially planned for the remainder of this year, and it's never been a better time to be part of the Next Gen Racing community. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, this wraps up the Next Gen Racing Proto GT3 Championship Season 3. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh. We've been Next Gen Racing, and until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.